Chapter 35, 95. Brother Tang, what about you? Rao Tianhan's gaze fell on Tang Taihong. The latter's eyes flickered with hesitation. Brother Rao, I know my limits. I fell for that nightmare just now. If I enter the nightmare nunnery, I'll only be a burden to you, so I won't go in. Tang Taihong cupped his fists and said in a deep voice. Mei Jinwen frowned slightly and said in slight displeasure, Tang Taihong, in the beginning, you swore that you would enter Nightmare Nunnery with Tianhan, and you were full of heroism. Why are you scared now? Tang Taihong was slightly embarrassed. He touched his nose and fell silent. Enough. Jinwen, don't say any more. This is Brother Tang's decision. We should respect his choice. Rao Tianhan spoke. He cupped his hands at Tang Taihong and said, Brother Tang, since you've made up your mind, I won't force you. Let's part ways here. With that, Rao Tianhan simply led Mei Jinwen into the Nightmare Nunnery's entrance. Tang Taihong watched with a complicated gaze as Rao Tianhan and Mei Jinwen disappeared into the Nightmare Nunnery's entrance. He felt a little guilty. After all, he was the one who took the initiative to find Rao Tianhan and wanted to travel with him. Now he was running away. It was indeed a little too much. Little guy, I heard that the corpse of the witch ancestor exists in the Nightmare Nunnery. Is this rumor true? Just as Tang Taihong was about to leave, a sinister voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Tang Taihong shivered. He actually didn't notice where the voice came from at all. It was as if it had appeared out of thin air beside his ears. Who are you? A terrifying aura suddenly erupted from Tang Taihong's body. He quickly retreated and spread out his divine sense, wanting to see who was playing tricks. But soon, his forehead was covered in cold sweat. No matter how his divine sense probed, he still couldn't find the source of the voice. I'm here. The eerie voice rang out again. Tang Taihong abruptly looked at the entrance of Nightmare Nunnery. A green-furred corpse stood there, its green eyes glaring eerily at him. You, Tang Taihong retreated again and stared at the green-furred mummy with apprehension. The fact that this green-furred corpse could appear near him without him noticing meant that it was at least at the fourth heaven's blight. The green-haired mummy was getting impatient. It grabbed at the air with its right hand, and Tang Taihong couldn't help but fly towards the mummy. Tang Taihong wanted to struggle, but he discovered that it was of no use. The strength of the green-haired mummy was completely unequal. The green-furred corpse grabbed Tang Taihong by the neck and lifted him up. It said indifferently, I'll ask you one more time. Does the corpse of an ancestral shaman really exist in this Nightmare Nunnery? Senior, don't kill me. The corpse of an ancestral shaman does exist in the Nightmare Nunnery. It's one of the 12 ancestral shamans. Ancestral shaman, CZ. Tang Taihong shivered. He already knew that the difference between him and this green-furred corpse was too great. TSK, that's good. Now, come with me. The green-furred mummy cackled. Without waiting for Tang Taihong to refuse, it entered the Nightmare Nunnery. The world inside the Nightmare Nunnery was grotesque. All kinds of extraordinary lights constantly flickered in the surroundings. Moreover, as these lights flickered, strange and bizarre illusions appeared one after another. As Zhuo walked through this strange space, his soul was enveloped by an illusory power at all times. What a powerful illusion. The entire Nightmare Nunnery is a pure illusion world. Zhuo looked around at the grotesque scenery around him, and his gaze became more and more solemn. He had been in this space for some time, but he discovered that he couldn't walk out of the illusion around him at all. Apart from that, there were also powerful souls hidden in this illusion. These souls would quietly appear when one's soul wasn't clear-headed. They would enter one's soul and mercilessly attack it. Zhuowen's soul had always been clear-headed, so he wasn't targeted by those souls. However, with his sharp divine telekinesis, he could clearly sense the killing intent and ferociousness emitted by the souls hidden in the dark. These souls were like vultures. They were silently lying in wait, waiting for his soul to fall into chaos. Then they would attack together and devour his soul completely. Zhuowen stopped. He looked at the grotesque world around him again and frowned. I can't continue like this. I have to break out of this illusion. Zhuowen muttered in a low voice. His eyes revealed a hint of coldness. Then he sat down cross-legged and began to mobilize his soul sword intent. Sword, come! A blazing golden light surged between Zhuowen's eyebrows. It was as if it had materialized and gathered there. In the end, the blazing golden light left his glabella and formed a terrifying golden sword light. The terrifying sword intent soared into the sky and instantly spread throughout the entire space, causing the grotesque world to faintly tremble under this terrifying sword intent. Sword slash! Zhuowen suddenly opened his eyes and exhaled a long breath. The golden sword light condensed between his eyebrows, soared into the sky, and mercilessly slashed upward. Bang! 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 The golden sword light continued to rush upward. Zhuowen's divine telekinesis clearly sensed that the souls hidden in the dark were collapsing under the golden sword light, bursting like balloons. Not only that the entire grotesque space, under the impact of the sword light, began to tremble violently, as if it would collapse at any time. The boundaries of the space were being torn apart inch by the golden sword light, collapsing inch by inch and obliterating inch by inch. In the end, the entire space seemed to experience an unprecedented earthquake. With a boom, the surrounding endless illusion was completely torn apart. Countless rays of light, like fireworks, bloomed above the space, gorgeous and dazzling. Zhuowen stood in the same place, welcoming the scattered rays of light. His expression was calm, like a god who indifferently looked at everything in the world. When the illusion was completely torn apart, Zhuowen discovered that the illusory space he was in was actually just a ball of light, and there were dozens of similar balls of light, all suspended in the air. Below the ball of light was an endless black sea, and above the sea there was only a long stone bridge. Zhuowen landed on the stone bridge from above. At the end of the stone bridge, he saw a towering mountain. At the junction between the stone bridge and the mountain, there was a dark tunnel. He didn't know where it led to. Zhuowen's eyes shone brightly. With a kick of his right foot, he rushed out like a bolt of lightning toward the tunnel at the end of the tunnel, instantly disappearing into the depths of the tunnel. Not long after Zhuowen left, the balls of light suspended in the air above the stone bridge seemed to be affected by Zhuowen's spiritual sword intent and collapsed, dissipating into countless spots of light. From afar, it looked as if there were blazing and gorgeous fireworks exploding above the stone bridge. Chapter 35:96. At this moment, the two of them were in a sorry state. Mei Jinwen's face was pale. She took a deep breath and said, "Tianhan, what's going on?" The illusory space we're in suddenly collapsed. Thinking of what had happened in the illusory space, Mei Jinwen's face turned even paler, and her eyes were filled with fear. After they entered the nightmare nunnery, they had fallen into the illusory space. The power of the illusory space was indeed very strong. At first, they could still resist the influence of the illusory space. But as time passed, they were gradually affected. Their souls were confused, and they were somewhat muddle-headed, just as their minds were in a daze. Dense and strange soul bodies appeared in the depths of the illusory space. These soul bodies were pervasive. They actually went deep into their acupoints and began to destroy their meridians. Then Along their meridians, they surged into their souls in an attempt to affect their souls. They tried their best to resist, but they found that there were too many soul bodies. It was impossible for them to completely resist. Just as they couldn't resist anymore, the illusory space collapsed. And those violent soul bodies also collapsed along with the collapse of the illusory space. They also managed to keep their lives. Jinwen, take this healing pill first. Let's heal first before moving on. Rao Tianhan took out 2 divine pills, consumed one, and handed the other to Mei Jinwen. Then, he sat down cross-legged to heal her injuries. Mei Jinwen put down the doubts in her heart and also sat down cross-legged to heal her injuries. Although she was very curious about the reason why the illusory space suddenly collapsed, she also knew that healing her injuries was the most important thing now. After all, it might be even more dangerous next. They had to raise their condition to the peak. Not long after, Rao Tianhan opened his eyes and stood up. He glanced at Mei Jinwen, who was still healing, and didn't disturb her. Instead, he looked around at the illusory space. Bang! Suddenly, a figure descended from the sky and stopped on a stone bridge not far from them. The entire stone bridge trembled because of this. Mei Jinwen, who was healing her injuries, suddenly woke up. She opened her eyes and stood up abruptly. She looked warily at the figure that suddenly descended in front of her. Rao Tianhan's pupils shrank. He stared at the figure in front of him and discovered that it was a strange green-haired corpse. What shocked him even more was that the green-haired corpse was carrying a person in its right hand. He was very familiar with this person. It was actually Tang Taihong. Tang Taihong saw Mei Jinwen and Rao Tianhan as well, and he smiled bitterly. "Brother Rao, Miss Mei, flee quickly. This senior is very strong." Rao Tianhan glanced at the green-furred corpse with fear, and then he cupped his fists and said, "Fellow Taoist, I'm Rao Tianhan from Sanqing Street. The person in your hands is my friend. I hope that senior can give me face, and let him go." The green-haired mummy laughed and said in a creepy voice, "Who do you think you are? Giving you face? What a joke." Rao Tianhan's face instantly darkened, and his heart was filled with anger. He was the strongest of the new generation in the 3 Purities Street. He was a famous figure in the 3 Purities Street. His cultivation had reached the early stage of the 4th Blight. Everyone in the heaven-accessing place knew him. He thought that since the green-haired mummy was a cultivator from the chaotic street, it should have heard of his name and would give him some face. But he didn't expect that the green-haired mummy wouldn't give him any face at all. It even dared to threaten him. With Rao Tianhan's pride, how could he bear it? "Since you don't give me face, then don't blame me for being impolite." Rao Tianhan was extremely angry. He became more and more unhappy with the green-haired mummy. He immediately pulled out the ice-blue divine sword on his back, took a step forward, and turned into a faint blue shadow, disappearing in place. At the same time, cold sword chi burst out from his body. It swept out like a storm, sharp and cold. The green-haired mummy showed a mocking smile. Then it punched out and hit Rao Tianhan's divine sword. Bang! A clear clanging sound rang out. Rao Tianhan's pupils constricted. Then he felt a huge force pass from the tip of the sword to the hilt. Then the web between his thumb and index finger on his right hand ruptured, and the divine sword flew out. A terrifying force poured into his body. Rao Tianhan spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. His face became extremely pale, and he looked at the green-haired mummy in horror. However, before he could react, the green-haired mummy had appeared in front of him and easily grabbed his neck. Then it threw him to the ground. Bang! The ground cracked. Rao Tianhan was dizzy. He spat out another mouthful of blood and trembled all over. the green-haired mummy stepped on Rao Tianhan mercilessly and said indifferently, "With your strength, you want me to give you face? Where did you get your confidence from?" Rao Tianhan's face was extremely red. He knew that the green-haired mummy's strength was far above his. It was probably at the late stage of the fourth blight, or even the peak. Its strength was terrifying. Thinking of this, Rao Tianhan secretly regretted it. He shouldn't have been so impulsive. He actually took the initiative to provoke the green-haired mummy. Not far away, Mei Jinwen was stunned when she saw Rao Tianhan's instant defeat. Her eyes were filled with fear as she looked at the green-haired mummy. The green-haired mummy stretched out its right hand, and Mei Jinwen, who had lost her mind, was easily caught in its hand and thrown not far away from Rao Tianhan. Tang Taihong looked at all of this and sighed in his heart. He knew that he had underestimated the green-haired mummy's strength. He originally thought that Rao Tianhan might not be a match for the green-haired mummy, but he would at least be able to keep his life. Now, it seemed that the gap between Rao Tianhan and the green-haired mummy was too great. If the green-haired mummy wanted to kill them, it could do so with just a flick of its finger. You entered the nightmare nunnery to find the corpse of the ancestral shaman, right? I'll give you a chance to perform. Lead the way. If you can find the ancestral shaman's corpse, I might consider sparing your lives. The green-haired mummy said indifferently, "Senior, we are willing." Tang Taihong quickly agreed. Mei Jinwen also expressed her agreement. At the same time, she kept winking at Rao Tianhan. Rao Tianhan lowered his head dejectedly and whispered, "I'm willing to." The green-haired mummy nodded and tapped the space between their eyebrows. Green stripes appeared between their eyebrows. These green stripes were very strange. They emitted a bright green light and contained a very strange and mysterious power. Rao Tianhan and the other two's expressions changed drastically. The moment the green stripes appeared between their eyebrows, their souls seemed to be imprisoned by a mysterious power. This power was so strong that it completely enveloped their souls. Chapter 3597. Rao Tianhan and the other two were in a daze. They did not doubt the green-haired corpse's words, because the moment the green stripes appeared between their eyebrows, they felt that their divine souls were wrapped by a mysterious force. This mysterious force was like a time bomb that could explode at any time, destroying and tearing their divine souls apart. Now, the three of you will lead the way for this king. But don't worry, as long as this king can really find the ancestral witch's corpse, this king will naturally let you live. The green-haired corpse stood behind the three, looking at their different expressions, and urged them with a sneer. Rao Tianhan and the other two were helpless and did not dare to refute. They began to walk towards the deep tunnel at the end of the stone bridge. Zhuowen walked in the dark tunnel for several hours. Gradually, he found a dim but bright light in the deepest part of the tunnel. In the second half of the tunnel, there were bright torches hanging on the walls on both sides. The flames were constantly burning, dispelling the darkness in the second half of the tunnel. In the latter half of the tunnel, Zhuowen used the light of the fire to discover that the ground was littered with the remains of many stone sculptures. They were scattered all over the place. From these remains, it could be seen that there were human stone statues, foreign stone statues, and some strange stone statues of strange beasts of unknown races. These stone statues were all dead, but every time Zhuowen came into contact with the eyes of these stone statues, he felt that they were alive. It was as if these stone statues were staring at him, observing his every move. This feeling was hair-raising. After passing through this tunnel of stone statue remains, Zhuowen finally stepped out of the tunnel. Outside the passageway was a vast valley. On both sides of the valley, there were magnificent waterfalls, like silver lines falling from the sky. Along the valley, At the end of the valley, there were huge ruins of a palace. The most conspicuous thing in front of the ruins was the standing statue. Zhuowen was very familiar with this statue. It was exactly the same as the female statue at the entrance of the Nightmare Abyss. They both had a human face and a snake's body, and a pair of beautiful and mysterious purple eyes. The only difference was that the female statue in front of him was much more beautiful than the female statue at the entrance. Moreover, the purple eyes were much brighter and more vivid. If the statue standing in front of Zhuowen was really a statue, Zhuowen would think that it was the eyes of a beautiful woman. Zhuowen did not hesitate. He went straight through the valley and came to the depths of the valley. The moment he stepped into the valley, the ancestral witch's goo insect in his doppelganger's body began to become restless. He knew that the nightmare nunnery's corpse should be somewhere in this valley. As he approached the front of the palace, Zhuowen's eyes casually glanced at the female statue in front of him. His attention was all on the palace behind the statue. Only when he got closer did he realize that the surface of the palace was actually covered in dense black vines. These vines were rather strange. They were constantly pulsing like the meridians in a human body, absorbing and transporting some kind of energy substance. Zhuowen followed the vines and landed at the source. He discovered that the source was at the very center of the palace ruins. There was a deep and serene cave there, and it went down vertically. Countless branches and vines grew out of the cave. The corpse of Ancestral, which nunnery is in the depths of this cave. Zhuowen's gaze was solemn. When he arrived near the cave, the goo insect in his doppelganger's body became more and more restless. Obviously, the corpse of Ancestral, which nunnery was definitely inside this cave. However, Zhuowen was a little hesitant. This cave was definitely not simple. There must be some kind of great danger inside. Moreover, the ruins of the palace gave him a very ominous premonition. Entering the interior of the cavern would definitely lead to disaster. I have a heaven-breaking divine weapon and a supreme treasure like the primordial stone. Even if there's really something terrifying in this cave, I'm afraid it won't be able to do anything to me. Zhuowen thought to himself. Without hesitation, he took a step forward and entered the cave. The moment Zhuowen rushed into the cave, the black vines around the palace seemed to be stimulated and retreated back into the cave. At the same time, the eyes of the woman statue standing outside the palace emitted a mysterious purple light. However, it disappeared in a flash and soon returned to its normal state. After entering the cave, Zhuowen found that it was not as dark as he had imagined. He could see clearly with his naked eye within a few miles. As he had expected, the two sides of the cave were covered with dense black vines. They were like meridians, tangled and complicated. However, the inside of the cave was filled with gusts of cold wind, causing Zhuowen to shudder in fear. In the beginning, nothing happened to Zhuowen while he was diving. However, an hour later, Zhuowen faintly heard the sound of a sobbing. The sound of crying was quite far away, faintly drifting over, sounding very melancholic. Zhuowen frowned. He did not expect that there would be a cry in the cave. Furthermore, the cry was clearly a woman's voice. Just as Zhuowen was thinking this, the cry suddenly came closer and closer. Zhuowen's body suddenly froze. This was because he realized that the cry was already very close and was softly ringing in his ears. It was as if the woman who kept crying was standing behind him at this moment, close to his ears and sobbing softly. Zhuowen frowned. He suddenly turned around and found that there was no one. However, the cry still echoed in his ears. Zhuowen tried a few times, but still did not find anyone. He simply ignored it and continued diving. But soon, the cry became louder and louder. In the end, it became hysterical. Then, Zhuowen felt a chill on the back of his ear, as if someone was blowing air into his ear. Zhuowen's face became gloomy. However, he did not say anything and did not look back. Instead, he quickly dived. After a while, the cool feeling disappeared from his ear. Then, Zhuowen's scalp felt as if it was being touched by a sharp claw. It was as if a sharp claw was scratching his scalp. Zhuowen took a deep breath. He was very calm and still ignored it. He could already feel that the corpse of Ancestral, which Kenzie was not far away from him. He had to reach there in one go and collect Ancestral, which Kenzie's corpse. Suddenly, he began to hear strange cries in his ears. Then his shoulders sank. It was as if someone was lying on his back. A sharp feeling came from his neck. It was as if he had been cut by a blade. Zhuowen's eyes turned cold. However, he still did not say anything, and his speed increased. Finally, he reached the bottom, and his feet landed on the ground. Chapter 35:98. The bottom seemed to be a world of black vines. They were intertwined in a disorderly manner, and the source of all the black vines was an abnormally huge body that was suspended in midair. This body had a human face and a bird's body. It had a green snake hanging from its ears and a red snake in its hand. This was one of the 12 ancestral shamans. Sai. 2 green snakes were coiled around Sai's ears, and 2 huge red snakes were coiled around his arms. However, both the green snakes and the red snakes were hanging on Sai's body, motionless. They had been dead for a long time. Zhuowen saw that the black vines were densely inserted into Sai's body and were constantly absorbing his physical energy. Zhuowen frowned slightly, and a vigilant look appeared in his eyes. The energy of the black vines came from the body of ancestral shaman CZ. Then, where did the energy absorbed by the black vines go? Are there other powerful creatures in this nightmare nunnery? Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. He recalled the strange crying he heard when he entered the cave, and the sudden increase in weight on his back. It was clear that there was some kind of living being controlling this place, or rather, that living being had purposely led him here. Its goal was probably to absorb the energy in his body. Just as Zhuowen was thinking this, the bottom suddenly shook. Then, the densely intertwined black vines suddenly rolled up and swept toward Zhuowen. The moment the black vines swept out, Zhuowen clearly saw countless bone fragments flying under the vines. His eyes darkened. He knew that these bone fragments were probably the corpses of the cultivators who had come down to investigate in the past. However, they had all died here and became nutrients for the black vines. Zhuowen was very calm. He suddenly stirred up the energy around him, and his entire body was purple. He took a step forward, and his fists were like the wind. The black vines that were pouncing toward him all collapsed under the bombardment of his fists. All of a sudden, a tens of meters thick vine shot out from the countless black vines. It quickly shot out from behind Zhuowen, wanting to wrap around him. Zhuowen did not hesitate to release his doppelganger. The doppelganger punched out and collided with the vine, but soon the clone was sent flying, and the vine was also stopped in place by the clone's punch, wriggling nonstop. Shattered godly power, the main body landed beside the clone and discovered that the clone's right fist was intact on the outside, but the inside was torn apart by some kind of mysterious power. He could tell at a glance that it was caused by shattered godly power. A look of astonishment appeared in his eyes. This black vine was actually using fragmented divine power. How was this possible? In this part of the galaxy, it was all thanks to the primordial art that he was able to use shattering divine power before advancing to the heaven-breaking stage. Aside from that, it was basically impossible for there to be any living being in this part of the galaxy that could use shattering divine power. Unless this living being was originally a heaven-breaking stage elite, but had merely severed their own cultivation to descend into this part of the galaxy, just like Bing Hui, could it be that the person behind this black vine is a heaven-breaking stage elite that came from beyond the galaxy? Zhuowen's eyes flashed, and he thought of a possibility, but his heart sank to the bottom. If it was really as he guessed, then his current situation was very bad. After all, heaven-breaking stage elites were too powerful, and were far from what a half-step heaven-breaking stage elite could compare to. Zhuowen's main body and doppelganger immediately merged into one. At this moment, the black vine also tore through the air and ruthlessly whipped onto Zhuowen's body. Zhuowen's eyes became very serious, and he suddenly waved his hands, shattering all the black vines around him. Then he suddenly punched out, and shattered godly power surged out, slamming into the black vine. Pung, peng, pung. In the instant that Zhuowen's fist came into contact with the black vine, he immediately blasted it more than a dozen times. And each time he blasted out an extremely frightening energy ripple, while the black vine was repeatedly beaten back by Zhuowen. Zhuowen sighed lightly. This black vine indeed contained shattering divine power, but it was not as powerful as he had imagined. With the shattering divine power that his main body and doppelganger could unleash, he was able to completely suppress this black vine. You, a little guy that hasn't even broken through to the heaven-breaking stage, actually has shattering divine power in your body? Looking at you, you don't look like someone who severed their own cultivation. So how did you get here? In the instant that Zhuowen blasted the black vine back, a sinister female voice rang out in this space, but there was a hint of surprise in this voice. This sinister female voice was not unfamiliar to Zhuowen. It was the owner of the weeping that had endlessly rung in his ears during the process of him descending into the cavern, pretending to be mysterious, still not coming out and showing yourself, sneaking around in the dark. What kind of hero are you? Zhuowen said indifferently, I'm just a weak woman, so of course I'm not some hero. However, I'm very curious about you. You're clearly not a heaven-breaking stage cultivator, but you can use shattering divine power. This is extremely rare even in the 100 outer regions. The sinister female voice rang out again, and there was more in the voice. There was a hint of teasing and interest. HM, what are you doing? You really came for this grand shaman CZ. The sinister female voice's voice suddenly changed, because Zhuowen suddenly rushed out, rushing towards the corpse of the grand shaman CZ. However, the female voice clearly wouldn't let Zhuowen have his way. Numerous black vines swept out, blocking Zhuowen's path. At the same time, the black vines that contained shattering divine power instantly swept out as many as hundreds, rushing towards Zhuowen, instantly surrounding Zhuowen and covering him. Divine soul sword intent, break for me. Zhuowen tapped between his eyebrows with his right hand, and golden light surged between his eyebrows. Instantly, a golden sword of light swept out, and under the control of Zhuowen's mind, it fiercely slashed towards the surroundings. The blazing golden light spread out, and then Zhuowen could clearly hear the female voice begin to scream in the air, seeming very frightened. Zhuowen's divine soul had already ascended to the heaven-breaking stage, and the divine soul sword intent it condensed was extremely terrifying, enough to injure the divine soul of a heaven-breaking stage cultivator. When Zhuowen was talking to that female voice just now, he discovered that this female voice was in the form of a divine soul. In addition, when he was descending, this woman had silently appeared behind him, so it could be seen that this female voice did not have a physical body. Moreover, this woman should know that his divine soul was not ordinary, so during the process of descending, she did not rashly attack and invade his divine soul. Your divine soul actually reached the heaven-breaking stage. How is this possible? Your cultivation clearly hasn't broken through the heaven-breaking stage, but your divine soul is actually so powerful, And this divine soul power is not ordinary at all. What kind of power is it? Why is it so strange? The female voice's shrill screams continuously sounded in the air, reverberating throughout the entire world below. Meanwhile, the divine soul sword intent slashed out, waving continuously in the void. Those densely packed vines were very afraid, and did not dare to confront the divine soul sword intent head-on. Chapter 35, 99. Ah, damn thief! How dare you steal my ancestral sorcerer's corpse and escape from here? Come back with me. In the cave, the eerie female voice's shrill cry was heard. Then, countless black vines attached to the interior of the cave broke free like a tide and entangled toward Zhuowen. Zhuowen's eyes were dignified. He made a gesture with both hands, and the sword essence of the divine soul under his feet suddenly swept out and quickly rotated around his body, forming a ball-shaped sword essence shield. All the countless black vines around him were blocked by the sword essence of the divine soul. Zhuowen, on the other hand, stomped his feet in the air and shot towards the top of the cave like an arrow leaving the bow. It had to be said that the sword essence of the divine soul condensed from the heaven-breaking divine soul was really terrifying, although it was not as powerful as Su Yuan's golden millstone and his 9 tribulations divine sword. It was far more powerful than the 5th Blight practitioners. Once this sword was used, even the strongest person in the heaven-accessing secret realm, 3 pure ones, would be seriously injured. The golden divine sword continued to sweep, and the sword essence was like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. All the black vines that spread over were all destroyed. Zhuowen, on the other hand, quickly approached the cave entrance. This time, Zhuowen's speed was extremely fast. It only took him half an hour to see the entrance of the cave. At the same time, Zhuowen found that the eerie female voice had suddenly disappeared, and the number of black vines around him had obviously decreased a lot. Zhuowen was surprised. He thought that the woman would attack him crazily. He didn't expect that the thunder was bigger than the rain. Although Zhuowen was full of doubts, he didn't think too much about it. The golden sword radiance around him cut off the last black vines, and the sword radiance completely dimmed. He knew that the sword essence of the divine soul had reached its limit. Zhuowen jumped up. The moment he was about to leave the cave completely, he suddenly had an extremely ominous feeling in his heart. A shadow suddenly appeared at the entrance of the cave, and then the shadow quickly approached Zhuowen. In the blink of an eye, it was in front of him. Endless wind whistled and approached him. Zhuowen didn't react quickly. He suddenly raised his hands, and purple energy emerged from his body. Bang! The shadow was very fast. In an instant, it fell on Zhuowen's body and hit his hands. The power of this attack was extremely terrifying. Dense cracks appeared in the surrounding space. Zhuowen let out a muffled groan and fell down. The moment he fell, he saw the true face of the shadow. It was a hand carved out of stone. He was no stranger to this stone hand. It was the right hand of the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue that stood in front of the palace ruins. Little guy, your soul is indeed extraordinary, but if that's all, you won't be able to escape from my grasp. Today, you shall become my sacrifice here. Inside the cave, the faint female voice resounded, constantly reverberating, sharp and ear-piercing. Black vines shot out from the depths of the cave, wrapping around Zhuo when in an instant. They completely surrounded him and drowned him. Damn it! Zhuowen's expression was ugly. The moment the black vines wrapped around him, he took out the golden coffin. Without thinking, he opened the coffin lid and crawled in. These black vines all contained shattering divine power. With so many of them added together, he would be seeking death if he faced them alone. Although he still had the 9 tribulations divine sword, the 9 tribulations divine sword's consumption was too great. He was afraid that before he could cut down all the black vines, the energy in his body would be sucked dry. The instant Zhuowen hid in the golden coffin, he immediately felt the violent sounds of the outside world falling on the golden coffin. However, the golden coffin was a level 2 heaven-breaking flight divine tool. After all, its outer shell was abnormally sturdy. Although the black vines outside were powerful, they really couldn't do anything to this golden coffin. Zhuowen sighed inwardly. His cultivation was still too low. If his cultivation was already at the heaven-breaking tier, or the 5th blight, then he would immediately be able to refine a portion of the golden coffin and control a portion of the golden coffin's power. He would immediately be able to break through space and leave this cavern. Unfortunately, he still didn't have the ability to control this golden coffin. He could only barely open the lid of the golden coffin and hide inside to take refuge. At the same time, in Moyan Wushang's room, in the outside world, Moyan Wushang suddenly stood up. A red light surged in between Moyan Wushang's eyebrows. Then, this red light appeared in front of Moyan Wushang, showing a vague shadow. From the figure of this shadow, it could be seen that this shadow should be a young woman. Moyan Wushang frowned slightly, looked coldly at this shadow, and said, "Luo Hong, why did you suddenly come out again? Didn't I say that if there's nothing else, you can't come out?" The woman's shadow was silent for a moment and sighed softly. "I really didn't expect that Nu didn't die. I sensed Nu Wu's aura. If I'm not wrong, the boy you like should have fallen into Nu Wu's hands now." Nu Wu, could it be that you said the competitor who once came to the lower realm with you? Moyan Wushang's beautiful eyes revealed a look of surprise. She had been with Luo Hong for a long time and knew that Luo Hong was a direct descendant of the Niwa clan. Although her cultivation wasn't very strong, her status wasn't low, and they had been together for many years, so Luo Hong naturally told her a lot of things. Under Luo Hong's indoctrination, Moyan Wushang's understanding of the 100 Outer Realms was even clearer than Zhuowen. She had also heard from Luo Hong that Nu Wu wasn't a direct descendant of the Niwa clan, but was only a collateral descendant. However, she was very talented, and her status in the Niwa clan wasn't weak. Once, she was ordered to come to the lower realm to carry out the ruthless and selfless plan. In order to steal the credit, Nu Wu secretly followed her. Later, she found out about Nu Wu, so the two of them fought fiercely. In the end, she was defeated by Nu Wu. Her body was destroyed, and her divine soul was annihilated. If she didn't have a life-saving secret, she would have died long ago. Of course, Nu Wu wasn't any better. Her body was almost destroyed, and her divine soul was almost destroyed. Her injuries were very serious. Nu Wu had always thought that Luo Hong was killed by her, but she didn't expect that Luo Hong had a life-saving secret. In the end, she left a trace of her divine soul, and lived until now. Yes, it's that bitch. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't have fallen into such a miserable state. I must kill her. Luo Hong was trembling with anger. Her shadow was constantly shaking, showing that she was not calm at the moment. Moyan Wushang shook his head and said, "With my current strength, I don't have the ability to avenge you. The only person who can do this is Brother Zhua. You can only cooperate with him." Chapter 3600. Moyan Wushang said calmly, "Do you have any other choice? If what you said is true, and Brother Zhua met Nu Wu, you and I will be finished if Brother Zhua dies." Luo Hong was silent. Finally, she said fiercely, "Humph, I'll tell you about Noah's weakness, and help Zhuowen get out of this predicament. But you can't betray me. Otherwise, I'll choose to die together with you." Moyan Wushang said calmly, "Don't worry. I swore that I wouldn't mention you, to anyone. Now, tell me about Nuwa's weakness. Okay, Luo Hong didn't want to drag things out. After agreeing, she told Moyen Wushang about Nuwa's weakness. After that, Luo Hong hid in Moyen Wushang's divine soul again and quieted down. Moyen Wushang stood up and took out a communication talisman. He hesitated for a moment and sent a message to Zhuowen. Then he sat back on the bed. Zhuowen, who was hiding in the golden coffin, also found that the communication talisman on his body lit up. He took out the communication talisman and found that it was a message from Moyen Wushang. His eyes lit up. However, after checking the communication talisman, his eyes lit up, but soon they were full of doubts. Moyen Wushang's message was about Nuwa's weakness. It also said that Nuwa was the powerful creature in the cave that he met now. Strange. How did Wushang know that the enemy I met was called Nuwa? And how did he know about her weakness? Zhuowen was a little confused. However, because of his trust in Moyen Wushang, he still wanted to try. He knew that since Moyen Wushang sent him a message, there must be a reason. Although he was still confused about how Moyen Wushang knew about this, he still chose to believe in him. Zhuowen slowly stood up. His eyes shone with a blazing light as he murmured in a low voice, "If the information Wushang gave me is true, then Nuwa's weakness is indeed hidden very deeply." Clang! A dazzling golden divine sword emerged from the void behind him. The aura that the divine sword exuded was extremely terrifying, as if it could crush the entire space. This divine sword was the 9 Tribulations divine sword. Open! Zhuowen took a deep breath and opened the lid of the golden coffin. He slashed out with his sword, and the terrifying sword light was like a meat grinder, cutting all the black vines near the golden coffin into dust. Zhuowen took advantage of this opportunity to jump out of the golden coffin and put it into his great world. See. The 9 Tribulations divine sword swept out and turned into countless sword shadows, like stars in the sky. The surrounding black vines were all cut into pieces by the sword shadows. After destroying the black vines that were blocking his way, Zhuowen did not flee towards the entrance of the cave above. Instead, he continued to dive downwards, rushing towards the area with the most black vines below. Endless sword shadows burst out in front of Zhuowen, and all the black vines in his way were destroyed. Zhuowen's sword suddenly blasted a hole in the circle of black vines. As for Zhuowen, he followed the opening and charged into the depths. In the ruins of the temple, the stone statue with a human face and a snake's body stood at the entrance of the cave, slowly withdrawing her right hand. The corners of her mouth curled into an anthropomorphic sneer, and she muttered in a low voice, "This time, it's really a delicious meal. I can sense the aura of other ancestral shamans on this boy. More importantly, I can actually sense the aura of Desireless on this boy. It seems that the Desireless of this starry sky is in this boy's hands. I just don't know if that bitch Luo Hong left a mark on him. However, it doesn't matter. After I kill this boy, I'll open the space world on him, and I'll naturally be able to find Desireless. If that bitch Luo Hong really left a mark on him, I'll just erase that mark and completely erase the last trace of that bitch from this world." Speaking up to here, the stone statue's eyes suddenly focused, and she immediately turned to look at the entrance of the valley where the temple was located. 4 figures appeared at the entrance of the valley. 3 of them were humans, 2 men, and 1 woman. Behind the 3 of them was a mummy covered in green hair. This is the end of the Nightmare Nunnery. Rao Tianhan walked at the front. He glanced at the temple at the end of the valley, and his eyes suddenly narrowed. He saw a stone statue with a human face and a snake's body in front of the dilapidated temple. It wasn't the first time he'd seen this stone statue. At the entrance of the Nightmare Abyss, there was a similar stone statue with a human face and a snake's body. However, What surprised him was that the stone statue of the dilapidated temple was actually moving freely. In particular, that pair of eyes that flickered with purple light actually flickered with a lively light. Kikik. Another delicacy delivered itself to my doorstep. Moreover, there are 4 of them at once. The heavens are really good to me. The stone statue with a human face and a snake's body sneered coldly. It took a step forward and swept towards Rao Tianhan. The expressions of Rao Tianhan and the other 2 who were walking at the front changed slightly. They all felt that this stone statue with a human face and a snake's body was extraordinary. The green-haired mummy frowned slightly. He didn't expect that there would be such a stone statue in the depths of the nightmare nunnery. Moreover, this stone statue was alive. The 3 of you, go and stop it. The green-haired mummy saw the cave inside the dilapidated temple. He guessed that the ancestral shaman's corpse was very likely in that cave. The 3 of them weren't stupid. They naturally knew that the green-haired mummy wanted to use them as bait. However, they had no choice. After all, their lives were in the hands of the green-haired mummy. They didn't dare to disobey the latter's orders. Thinking of this, the 3 of them gritted their teeth and turned into 3 shadows that swept towards the stone statue. The green-haired mummy wasn't slow either. While Rao Tianhan and the other 2 were fighting the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue, it planned to charge into the hall. Bang! 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 However, what the green-haired mummy didn't expect was that the moment the 3 of them fought the stone statue, they were all sent flying backwards and smashed into the rock walls on both sides of the valley. They were all dripping with blood and were severely injured. Damn it, these 3 trash. The green-haired mummy had just passed by the stone statue. Before he could react, the stone statue attacked again and smashed a fist on the green-haired mummy's body. The green-haired mummy's reaction wasn't slow either. He also smashed a fist. The 2 fists collided and released layers of terrifying explosive energy. Then the green-haired mummy groaned and was directly smashed to the ground by the fist. His right fist was trembling nonstop, and the web between his thumb and forefinger cracked. So powerful! The green-haired mummy's pupils shrank. Before he could sigh, the stone statue raised its leg and chopped down. Chapter 36:01. Your cultivation is clearly only at the peak of the 4th blight, but your body is so tough. How rare! The purple eyes of the stone statue flickered as it looked at the green-haired mummy slowly crawling up from the deep pit. At this moment, the green-haired mummy's face was extremely gloomy. He stared coldly at the stone statue, but his heart was inexplicably shocked. The strength of this stone statue was beyond his imagination. It was a bit too strong. It was at least at the peak of the 5th blight. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to injure him so easily. Run! The green-haired mummy didn't even think. A green light surged from between his eyebrows, and he instantly turned into an indiscernible green shadow and disappeared. Kiki, want to escape? It's not that easy. The human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue gave a sinister smile. With a stomp of its right foot, it turned into an afterimage and disappeared on the spot. In the blink of an eye, it appeared in front of the green-haired mummy and threw a punch. So fast. The green-haired mummy's face was gloomy. Without thinking, he quickly retreated and barely dodged the punch. He already knew that the stone statue was much faster than him. There was no chance for him to escape. Bang! 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 The moment the green-haired mummy retreated, the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue instantly closed in. Both of its fists blasted out like cannonballs. Countless fist shadows exploded and poured down on the green-haired mummy's body. The green-haired mummy mustered all the energy in his body and had no choice but to fight with the stone statue. Unfortunately, the gap between him and the stone statue was too great. He was ruthlessly suppressed and could only passively resist with his fists. More and more injuries appeared on his body. Although his body was terrifyingly powerful, it gradually showed signs of weakness. A terrifying blood mist burst out from his body. His injuries were extremely serious. At this moment, Rao Tianhan and the other two who were embedded in the rock wall of the valley saw this scene and felt a chill in their hearts. They had already experienced how strong the green-haired mummy was. But now, the green-haired corpse that was so formidable in their eyes was actually suppressed by the stone statue. Wasn't this a little too shocking? Just how terrifying was the strength of this mysterious human-faced snake-bodied statue? Thinking up to here, Rao Tianhan and the others felt a chill in their hearts. They were terrified to the extreme and only wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. Unfortunately, their injuries were too serious. At that moment, it was difficult for them to even move. Moreover, there was an inexplicable suction force on the walls of the valley that firmly sucked them in, making it impossible for them to break free. Looks like we won't be able to escape this calamity today. Rao Tianhan sighed. Mei Jinwen and Tang Taihong's eyes were also filled with sorrow, but they did not say a word. Puchi, the green-haired mummy, was once again sent flying with a punch. Its chest was almost pierced through. Blood splashed out, and its aura became extremely weak. Am I going to die here today? The green-haired mummy knelt on the ground, panting heavily. His injuries were too severe, and his strength had dropped drastically. On the other hand, the human-faced snake-bodied stone statue was still at its peak. He knew that he was finished. He was going to be beaten to death by the human-faced snake-bodied stone statue. The human-faced snake-bodied stone statue slowly walked over with a mocking smile on her lips. She said indifferently, "In my eyes, all the creatures in your starry sky are ants. A mere ant dares to fight with me? Aren't you courting death?" The green-haired mummy glared at the human-faced snake-bodied stone statue and said in a low voice, "You really aren't a creature of this starry sky. Who are you? Who I am is not important. What's important is that you will become my meal. I hope you are to my liking." The human-faced snake-bodied stone statue walked in front of the green-haired mummy and looked down at it. Then the human-faced snake-bodied stone statue stretched out its right hand and clasped the green-haired mummy's head. Just as the human-faced snake-bodied stone statue was about to finish him off, her expression suddenly changed. She turned her head abruptly and looked at the dilapidated hall, letting out an angry scream. The human-faced snake-bodied stone statue ignored the green-haired mummy and rushed out toward the palace ruins in front of her. Finally, she rushed into the deep cave in the palace ruins. The green-haired mummy let out a light breath and looked at the human-faced snake-bodied stone statue in surprise. He didn't know what had happened to the human-faced snake-bodied stone statue. Boom, boom, boom. Just as the green-haired mummy was puzzled, a violent explosion occurred in the palace ruins. A terrifying sword intent rushed out of the cave. The sharp edge caused the green-haired mummy to tremble all over, and fear appeared in his eyes, because he felt an unprecedented aura of death in this sword intent. There was no doubt that the terror of this sword intent had exceeded his scope of understanding. This is definitely a power that surpasses the half-step world-shattering realm. Could there be a heaven-shattering powerhouse inside the cave? The green-haired mummy was frightened by his own thoughts. Their starry sky had evolved for so many years, but there had never been a heaven-shattering powerhouse. If one really did appear, it would definitely cause a sensation in the starry sky. But now, what was the terrifying sword intent in the cave? Could it be a powerhouse from beyond the starry sky? The green-haired mummy's eyes flickered, and his expression was uncertain. Boom, boom. Suddenly, the entire palace collapsed, and from the center of the cave, an extremely sorry figure flew out and smashed into the ground not far from the green-haired mummy. The green-haired mummy took a closer look and immediately found that the figure that flew out was the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue that had beaten him half to death before. At this moment, the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue was covered in cracks, and its aura was not as strong as it was at the beginning. It had become extremely dispirited. Damn it, how did you find the hiding place of my true body? How did you know it was my weakness? The human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue roared angrily, almost losing its mind. The green-haired mummy followed her line of sight and looked at the palace ruins. Only then did he find a tall and straight figure slowly walking out of the endless dust. Around this figure was a divine sword shining with golden light. The aura of this divine sword was really too terrifying. As soon as the green-haired mummy came into contact with it, he felt his heart skip a beat, and his face became extremely pale. This figure arrived in front of the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue in one step and stepped on the stone statue that was struggling to get up again. "It's you?" When this figure came closer, the green-haired mummy almost cried out in surprise and looked at the young man in front of him in disbelief. "Yo, Green Hat, I didn't expect you to be here too. What a coincidence." The young man looked at the green-haired mummy indifferently and raised his eyebrows, his tone rather frivolous. It's a coincidence." The green-haired mummy did not dare to look at the young man, but a stormy sea was set off in his heart, and he was almost roaring. He was very familiar with this young man in front of him. He had seen this person when he was in Witch God's City. Chapter 36:02. How did he become so strong? The green-haired corpse looked at the heavily injured, human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue, and then looked at the calm Zhuowen. His mood was very complicated. When they were still in Witch God's City, Zhuowen was not his match at all. In the end, he had to flee pathetically under his attacks. Now, his cultivation had skyrocketed again, and he had reached the peak of the fourth blight. He thought that if he met Zhuowen again, he would be able to capture him easily, but he didn't expect that the other party's speed of improvement would far surpass his. Didn't he see that the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue that had just beaten him up was now under Zhuowen's feet? "It's that Zhuowen?" Not far away, Rao Tianhan and the other two, who were still embedded in the rock wall, all sucked in a breath of cold air. Their eyes were wide open, and their hearts were like raging waves. He arrived here one step ahead of us. In other words, the nightmare crisis before the nightmare nunnery should have been resolved by him. Mi Jinwen thought of something and suddenly realized it wasn't just the nightmare crisis. After we entered the nightmare nunnery, didn't we fall into an illusion and narrowly escape death? In the end, the illusion broke by itself. At that time, I suspected that someone might have done it. I originally thought that it was the green-haired corpse that interfered, but now it seems that I was wrong. I'm afraid that it was also Zhuowen who did it, Rao Tianhan said with a complicated gaze. Tang Taihong was silent for a moment before saying, "In other words, he saved us twice." Rao Tianhan smiled bitterly and nodded. "It's funny that we thought of him as a burden and didn't give him any face. I'm afraid that he didn't even take us seriously at that time." Zhuowen naturally didn't know the specific thoughts of Rao Tianhan and the other two, as well as the green-haired corpse. At this moment, his right foot was stepping on the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue as he asked with bright eyes, "I presume that you are Nu Wu?" The human-faced, snake-bodied statue calmed down. She stared at Zhuowen and suddenly laughed. "Ha ha, that bitch Luo Hong is still alive. It seems that bitch helped you find my weakness." At this point, Nu Wushuang's eyes turned red as she shrieked. "That bitch, I've already annihilated her. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a calamity today." "Falling rainbow? Who is that?" Zhuowen asked doubtfully. Moyan Wushang was the one who told him about Nu Wu's weakness. What did it have to do with Luo Hong? "Ha ha, are you still pretending in front of me? In this universe, only Luo Hong and I are members of the Nuwa clan, and we had a great battle all those years ago. Only that bitch knows my weakness. If Rainbow Fall hadn't helped you, how could you have known my weakness? Also, you have a Heaven Breaker divine artifact on you. Which clan are you from?" Nuwu spat. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes, but his heart sank. From what Nu Wushuang had said, he had guessed a lot. Nu Wushuang and Luo Hong were both members of the Nuwa clan, and only Luo Hong knew Nu Wu's weakness. And this weakness was told to him by Moyan Wushang, which meant that Luo Hong was probably in Moyan Wushang's body. Perhaps Moyan Wushang's change in temperament was related to Luo Hong. Just as Zhuowen was lost in thought, the purple light in Nu Wushuang's eyes suddenly became thicker. Then it left her eyes and formed a purple line, which instantly drilled into Zhuowen's eyes. The power of the purple line followed Zhuowen's eyes and suddenly entered his divine soul. Zhuowen's body stiffened, and he stood still. Possession? Seeing this, the green-haired mummy immediately guessed Nu Wushuang's purpose. His eyes flashed, and a trace of killing intent rose in his heart. Zhuowen had been possessed by Nu Wushuang, and there must have been a struggle. This was the best time for him to kill Zhuowen. After all, this boy had the corpse of the witch ancestor. In addition, didn't Nu Wushuang say that this boy had a Heaven Breaker artifact? The green-haired mummy knew how powerful such a Heaven Breaker artifact was. If he could obtain such a Heaven Breaker artifact, he would be invincible in this starry sky. Who would be able to fight him? The green-haired mummy also faintly understood that the main reason Zhuowen's strength suddenly became so strong was probably because of this Heaven Breaker artifact. Thinking of this, the green-haired mummy's eyes blazed, and he slowly walked towards Zhuowen. As long as he killed this boy, he would be able to obtain all the treasures on this boy's body, and he would be invincible in this starry sky. The green-haired mummy's heart was surging, and he had already walked to Zhuowen's side. He suddenly stretched out his right hand and grabbed towards Zhuowen's chest. Green energy condensed in his right hand, and it became extremely fierce. The moment the green-haired mummy's right hand was about to hit Zhuowen's chest, a terrifying aura exploded from Zhuowen's body. The green-haired mummy was caught off guard, and he was blown away by this aura. He landed heavily on the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. When he raised his head to look at Zhuowen, he was horrified to find that the latter had opened his eyes. At the same time, a horrified scream came from between Zhuowen's eyebrows. The green-haired mummy was no stranger to this scream. It was Nu Wushuang's voice. Whoosh! A purple light rushed out from between Zhuowen's eyebrows, and it quickly fled into the distance. "Do you think you can escape?" Zhuowen sneered, opened his hand, and caught the purple light that had just escaped. "Your divine soul. Why does your divine soul have the aura of the primordial chaos? Who are you?" Nu Wushuang's horrified voice sounded. The purple light that fell into Zhuowen's palm had already become dim. Zhuowen did not pay attention to Nu Wushuang's words. Instead, he imprisoned her and threw her into the golden ring. The reason why he did not throw Nu Wushuang into the outside world was mainly because he was worried that it would alarm the rainbow fall that Nu Wushuang had mentioned. If he guessed correctly, The rainbow fall was most likely in Moyan Wushang's body. This could also explain why Moyan Wushang's temperament had changed so much after he woke up. What did you want to do just now? After dealing with new Wushuang's divine soul, Zhuowen slowly turned his head and looked at the green-haired mummy not far away. The green-haired mummy was so scared that his legs became weak. He lowered his head and did not dare to look at Zhuowen. He said, Taoist Zhuo, I was worried that something would happen to you, so I wanted to wake you up. I didn't expect Taoist Zhuo to be so brave and powerful. You actually got rid of the divine soul so quickly. My action just now was superfluous. After saying this, the green-haired mummy struggled to stand up. He cupped his hands and smiled at Zhuowen. He said, Taoist Zhuo, if there is nothing else, I will take my leave. I still have some urgent matters to attend to, so I will not stay here for long. Zhuowen looked at the green-haired mummy's back and said, Did I allow you to leave? The green-haired mummy trembled and immediately began to escape. However, before he could escape far, a terrifying sword essence swept over and instantly pierced through the green-haired mummy's chest and nailed it to the ground. Plop! The green-haired mummy fell directly to the ground. He trembled and screamed, Zhuowen, what are you doing? I have no enmity with you. Why are you looking for me? Chapter 36:03. What do you want? The green-haired corpse sighed in its heart and raised its head to look at Zhuowen. It's very simple. Acknowledge me as your master and tell me your specific origins. Zhuowen said indifferently, speaking of which, this green-haired corpse was accidentally released by him back then. Even now, he still didn't know the exact origins of the green-haired corpse. Moreover, this green-haired corpse seemed to need the corpse of the ancestral shaman, which made Zhuowen even more curious. You want me to acknowledge you as my master? The green-haired corpse stared and shook its head. Zhuowen sneered and flicked his finger. A wisp of white flame swept out from his fingertip. When the flame landed on the green-haired corpse, it instantly ignited its entire body. It's actually the ultimate Hanin flame. How did you get this flame? The green-haired corpse was wrapped in the white flame and kept rolling and screaming miserably. I'll acknowledge you as my master. I'll listen to you. Quickly take this flame away. If you don't take it away, I'm really going to die. The green-haired corpse screamed again and finally gave in. Zhuowen ignored it and didn't take away the flame. Instead, he said coldly, Then hand over your soul imprint. After you hand it over, I'll take away the flame. The green-haired corpse was helpless and hurriedly took out the soul imprint and handed it to Zhuowen. After Zhuowen put away the soul imprint, he flicked his finger and put away the ultimate Hanin flame on the green-haired corpse's body. The green-haired corpse's body was already charred black. It lay limp on the ground and didn't move at all. Take this pill. Zhuowen threw a healing pill to the green-haired corpse and didn't care about its life or death. Instead, he went straight to Rao Tianhan and the other two. Fellow Taoist Zhuo, we meet again. When Rao Tianhan saw Zhuowen walking over, he smiled awkwardly. Mei Jinwen and Tang Taihong lowered their heads. Their cheeks were a little hot, and they didn't dare to look at Zhuowen. They wanted to ask Zhuowen to save them, but when they thought of the ridicule and contempt they had for Zhuowen, they couldn't open their mouths. Zhuowen naturally saw the complicated emotions of the three of them. He smiled slightly and waved his sleeve. A wave of energy swept out and gently lifted the three of them and placed them on the ground. At the same time, he threw a healing pill to the three of them and said, This is a healing pill. Take it. After Rao Tianhan and the other two consumed the healing elixir, they could indeed feel the warmth in their bodies. A warm current circulated in their bodies, constantly healing their injuries. At this moment, the green-haired mummy had finished adjusting its breathing and came to Zhuo Wen's side. "Greetings, master." The green-haired mummy knelt on one knee and said respectfully. The three of them were obviously still a little afraid of the green-haired corpse. Although they knew that the latter had been subdued by Zhuo, they still couldn't suppress the fear in their hearts. "Okay, take Brother Rao and the other two out of the Nightmare Nunnery and wait for me at the entrance. I still have some things to deal with here. Once I'm done, I'll go out and meet up with you," Zhuo said indifferently. The green-haired corpse nodded and accepted the order. Then it brought Rao Tianhan and the other two away from this place. After watching the green-haired corpse and the other three leave, Zhuo came to the ruins of the temple and sat down cross-legged. He sighed lightly. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and his face became pale. According to the information Moyan Wushang gave him, he had indeed found Nu Wu's weakness in the depths of the cave, and Nu Wu's weakness was her body. The countless vines and the strange black vines in the cave were derived from her body. Because Nu Wu herself was a shattering heaven-tier elite, that black vine contained shattering god power. At that time, he had used 3 9-tribulation divine swords to finally destroy Nu Wu's body. However, he had also been seriously injured because of this. Previously, he had been holding his breath in front of the green-haired corpse. Although the price I paid this time was great, the harvest was great. Zhuo Wen's eyes flickered. With a flip of his right hand, a 7-colored crystal and a scroll that flowed with a strange light appeared in his palm. These two things were tightly held by Nu Wu's hands. Obviously, they were extremely important. There was an extremely powerful restriction on the surface of the scroll, which was at least at the Heaven Breaker level. Zhuo couldn't break it at the moment. However, the 7-colored crystal was very strange. The energy contained in the 7-colored crystal was extremely beneficial to the divine soul. Zhuo could clearly feel his divine soul being nourished and strengthened just by holding it in his hand. He knew that the 7-colored crystal was definitely a treasure that targeted the divine soul. In the wandering starry sky, any treasure related to the divine soul was absolutely priceless, even in terms of alchemy. As long as it was a divine pill that repaired and strengthened the divine soul, its value was also far higher than same-rank divine pills. Although Zhuo didn't know what the 7-colored crystal was, he did know that the strange energy inside this 7-colored crystal could continuously strengthen his divine soul. Perhaps he could rely on the energy inside this 7-colored crystal to make his divine soul transform again. Zhuo's eyes were bright. Taking a deep breath, after putting away these two things, he muttered to himself, "The most important thing now is to recuperate from my injuries first." After Zhuo took out a pile of earth-healing divine pills, he started to close his eyes and recuperate from the injuries in his body. Half a month later, the earth-healing divine pills around Zhuo were basically exhausted. The injuries on his body were finally more or less healed. Zhuo took out that 7-colored crystal again, his eyes bright, and said in a low voice, "I hope this crystal can really make my divine soul transform again." After tasting the sweetness of the divine soul sword intent, Zhuo knew the benefits of a strong divine soul. Moreover, the stronger his divine soul was, the easier it would be for him to make breakthroughs in alchemy and formations. It could be said that it was beneficial to him. Zhuo held the 7-colored crystal in his right hand. His divine soul surged out from between his brows and wrapped around the surface of the 7-colored crystal. He began to rapidly absorb the strange energy inside the crystal. At the same time, Zhuo took out a chaos crystal from the great world. Holding it in his left hand, he began to rapidly absorb the chaotic energy. time passed by minute. In the blink of an eye, more than 3 months had passed. Suddenly, Shuo Wen's eyes opened, and a strong purple intent spread out from them. At that moment, a blazing purple tide shot out from between Zhuo Wen's brows. It soared into the sky and instantly dyed the entire horizon purple. The purple tide surged more and more. In an instant, it completely enveloped the space within the Nightmare Nunnery. The countless souls that had been hiding in the Nunnery of Nightmares crumbled and were annihilated the moment the purple tide reached them. In an instant, the Nightmare Nunnery fell silent. Meanwhile, the purple tide also slowly receded and surged into the depths of Zhuo Wen's brows. Zhuo Wen's eyes flashed with a threatening light. He knew that his divine soul had transformed again. If his divine soul had only just broken through to the early stage of the heaven-crushing first transformation, then his divine soul had already reached the peak stage of the heaven-crushing first transformation. He was very close to breaking through to the second transformation. At the same time, a vast aura surged within his body. This aura soared into the sky and transformed into a boundless roar. Chapter 3604. The 7-colored crystal was indeed miraculous. It had actually strengthened his divine sense by so much. At the same time, he was also somewhat speechless at his own appetite. He had actually directly used up the chaos crystal. One had to know that when he had broken through to a major cultivation level, only 1/3 of the chaos crystal was enough. But now, just breaking through to a minor cultivation level actually required a chaos crystal. One had to admit that his current appetite was somewhat frightening. After all, this chaos crystal was for breaking heaven-tier elites to cultivate. The energy contained within was unbearable for those below the breaking heaven tier. If it weren't for the fact that Zhuo had fragmented divine power in his body, he wouldn't have been able to use the chaos crystal. When his divine sense and cultivation both broke through, he didn't leave this place. Instead, he began to study formations and alchemy. His divine sense had become even stronger. He was confident that he could successfully set up a breaking heaven tier 1 formation and divine pill. When Zhuo successfully set up a breaking heaven tier 1 formation, a year had already passed, and Zhuo didn't try to refine a breaking heaven tier 1 earth divine pill. He could deduce formations and set up a basic formation. But alchemy recipes couldn't be deduced. He didn't have the recipe for a breaking heaven tier divine pill, so he naturally didn't know where to start refining pills. If I go to the 100 domains in the future, I must find a breaking heaven tier divine pill and a true breaking heaven tier formation model. Zhuowen's eyes were resolute. Although he had deduced a breaking heaven tier 1 formation, it was only a very ordinary confinement killing formation. Moreover, it could only be considered as barely reaching breaking heaven tier 1. If compared to a true breaking heaven tier 1 formation, there might still be some gap. Of course, this confinement killing array was definitely sufficient in the entire starry sky. No one could escape from this confinement killing array. He also knew that if he wanted to continue developing his alchemy recipes, then he had to go to the 100 domains to learn. After all, he was already considered to be standing at the pinnacle of the galaxy. He already couldn't learn anything in this galaxy. I didn't expect to stay here for an entire year. Zhuo stood up, patted the dust off his body, and took out a scroll from the great world. This scroll's surface flowed with a strange light. Touching it in his hand, it felt warm and soft. There was a powerful restriction on the surface of the scroll, but Zhuo didn't try to break it, because he'd noticed a long time ago that the strength of this restriction had already surpassed his current level in the formation Tao. Moreover, he sensed an aura of danger from the restriction. Obviously, if he broke the restriction on his own, he might fall into some sort of danger. Zhuowen was very cautious as he took out Envy Wu's spirit from the golden ring. At this moment, Nu Wu's soul was dim and dispirited. Damn it! I'm a direct descendant of the Nuwa clan. If you know what's good for you, you'd better let me go. Offending the Nuwa clan is not a wise decision. Nu glared at Zhuowen angrily and threatened in an unfriendly tone. Hee, I don't care which clan you're from. Now that you've fallen into my hands, your life and death are naturally in my hands. If you know what's good for you, I might still give you a chance to reincarnate. Otherwise, I'll directly scatter your soul. Zhuowen didn't hide the killing intent in his eyes as he stared coldly at Nu Wu. Nu Wu's hair stood on end as she felt a chill in her heart. She knew that Zhuowen would really do something that would make her soul scatter. When Zhuowen saw that Nu Wu was silent, he knew that she understood her current situation. This scroll is yours, right? Tell me how to break it. Zhuowen took out the scroll and said indifferently, "This scroll is my cultivation visualization diagram. As long as you agree to let me go, I'll help you break the restriction on the surface of the scroll." Nu Wu gritted her teeth and said in a deep voice, "Visualization diagram." Zhuowen's expression didn't change, but his heart was filled with doubts. This was the first time he'd heard of this visualization diagram, and his heart was filled with curiosity. Now that your life and death are in my hands, what right do you have to talk to me about conditions? If you don't want to break it, then I won't talk nonsense and will directly scatter your soul. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. He didn't plan to let Nu Wu go at all. After all, Nu Wu was from the Nuwa clan and was from the 100 domains outside the realm. If he let her go just like that, there was no guarantee that she wouldn't call for reinforcements in the future and descend upon this starry sky again. At that time, not only him, but the entire starry sky would be plunged into a catastrophe. Nu Wu panicked. She didn't expect Zhuowen to be unmoved by force or persuasion. If her soul was really scattered, she would really be miserable. She wouldn't even be able to enter the reincarnation cycle, and all traces of her would completely disappear from this world. Zhuowen's right hand gathered shattered divine power and began to target Nu Wu's soul. If he wanted to, this palm strike could completely annihilate Nu Wu's soul. "Stop. I'll help you break the restriction on this scroll." Nu Wu gave in and quickly began to break the restriction. Soon, Zhuowen sensed that the restriction on the surface of the scroll had disappeared. He immediately unfolded the scroll and found that there was a portrait inside the scroll. The portrait was very simple. It was only a blooming green lotus. It was tender and beautiful, and it was extremely extraordinary. When Zhuowen's gaze fell on the green lotus, Zhuowen found that the green lotus seemed to be alive, swaying and shining in his eyes. This is the green lotus visualization image. It's considered a low-level visualization image in the 100 domains outside the realm. With this visualization image, it's no problem to cultivate your soul to the heaven-crushing 3 transformation. Nu Wu introduced. Zhuowen nodded and expressionlessly put away the visualization image. However, he was excited. So this visualization image was for cultivating one's soul. This would be of great help to him. "There's one more thing I need to ask you," Zhuowen said in a deep voice. "Go ahead." Nu Wu sighed softly. "You mentioned Luo Hong before. Who is Luo Hong?" Zhuowen asked the question that had been in his heart for a long time. "You don't know Luo Hong? I clearly sensed her aura on your body. Isn't she with you?" Nu Wu asked in surprise. "Now, I'm the one asking you. Tell me about Luo Hong. The more detailed, the better," Zhuowen said expressionlessly. Nu Wu was very puzzled. However, She was now under the control of others and could only obey. Thus, Nu Wu began to narrate everything about Luo Hong. At the same time, she also told Zhuowen about the plan of Wu Yu and Wu Qing. Zhuowen's face became uglier and uglier as he listened. In the end, his eyes were filled with anger. Now, he finally knew why Moyan Wushang was silent and alienated from everyone after he woke up. It turned out that it was all because of Luo Hong. Nu Wu saw a clue from Zhuowen's face. She looked thoughtful. Chapter 36:05. When Zhuowen entered the Ryuka station in the outside world, Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao seemed to have expected him to come and were waiting for him at the entrance. "Father, Mother, are you waiting for me?" Zhuowen asked in surprise. Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao looked at each other, and Feng Xiao said happily, "Yes, when Wushang is looking for me. She said she wants to talk to you alone." Zhuowen narrowed his eyes, took a deep breath, and said in a deep voice, "Take me there. I really need to talk to Wushang." He had a hunch that Moyan Wushang took the initiative to look for him. It might have something to do with Luo Hong. Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao saw that Zhuowen's face was not very good, and their hearts were full of doubts. Moyan Wushang took the initiative to look for Zhuowen. Wasn't this a good thing? Why did Zhuowen look so gloomy? Although the two of them were very doubtful, they didn't ask much. Instead, they took Zhuowen straight to Moyan Wushang's room. Along the way, the three of them chatted casually. Zhuowen basically explained to Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao what he had done outside during this time. After chatting for a while, Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao realized that their son had become so powerful. At the same time, Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao also vaguely expressed to Zhuowen that their Ryuka wanted to leave the outside world. It was true that the great world did have rich resources and powerful heavenly energy. However, the outside world was only created by Zhuowen. Besides the Ryuka, there were basically no other cultivators in the outside world, not even ordinary creatures. Ryuka had developed very quickly during this time, but after staying in the outside world for a long time, many Ryuka cultivators began to feel uncomfortable because they were too isolated from the outside world. Zhuowen's eyes were dignified. He had also thought of this problem. After all, the Ryuka were cultivators. They also needed to communicate with other people. They needed to cultivate and live in the world of cultivators. If they were isolated from the outside world for a long time, the future development of the Ryuka would actually be more harmful than beneficial. However, although Zhuowen was strong now, he had many enemies. Unless he completely eliminated all the existing enemies and then deterred all the cultivators in this starry sky. At that time, he could let the Ryuka leave the outside world and take root in the outside world. On the way, Zhuowen also told Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao his thoughts. The two of them expressed their understanding. They also knew that Zhuowen had many grudges in the outside world. Moreover, these grudges were all from peerless great powers. It was definitely not something that the Long family could contend against. If these grievances were not resolved, and the Ryuka rashly left the outside world, they would eventually become a burden to Zhuowen. Fortunately, the two already knew about Zhuowen's current strength. They knew that Zhuowen would not need to spend a long time to completely resolve the grievances in the outside world. At that time, the Ryuka would be able to move out with peace of mind. When, go in by yourself. Wushang is waiting for you in the room. Feng Xiao and Long Xiaotian stopped outside Moyan Wushang's room. Zhuowen nodded and strode into the room. The door was ajar. Zhuowen gently pushed the door open, closed it, and entered the room. The layout of the room was very simple. In the living room, there was a round sandalwood table. At this moment, a beautiful woman was sitting quietly at the round table. The moment Zhuowen entered the room, the woman slowly raised her head. A ripple appeared in her calm eyes. "You're here?" Moyen Wushang said softly. Zhuowen nodded and walked to the table. He sat down in front of Moyen Wushang. "Wushang, you suddenly wanted to see me. There must be something you want to tell me." Zhuowen stared at Moyen Wushang. His gaze was gentle as he continued, "Don't worry. Just tell me what you want to say. I will spare no effort to help you." In the conversation with Nu Wu, Zhuowen had already faintly guessed that Moyen Wushang's strange behavior was related to Luo Hong. Now that Moyen Wushang had taken the initiative to see him, he naturally wanted Moyen Wushang to confess everything about Luo Hong and help him get through this difficult time. Moyen Wushang's beautiful eyes suddenly became cold and ruthless. She was silent for a moment and said flatly, "Brother Zhuo, I only have one thing to ask of you. I hope that you can agree to my request on account of how much I've helped you in the past." Zhuowen was startled. He looked deeply at Moyen Wushang in front of him. He felt that Moyen Wushang at this moment gave him a strange feeling of alienation. It was as if the latter had changed into another person. "Say it." Zhuowen pondered for a moment and said in a low voice, "I want to leave the outside world. From now on, I will cut off all ties with you. You don't need to look for me in the future." Moyen Wushang said in a deep voice. "Why?" Zhuowen's heart skipped a beat, and he couldn't help asking, "Don't you know the reason? You have already found Chen Shui. If I stay here, won't I be in the way? I might as well leave." Moyen Wushang's voice was a little cold. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He looked at Moyen Wushang in front of him, but his divine sense quietly fell on Moyen Wushang. "What are you doing?" Moyen Wushang suddenly stood up. Her beautiful eyes coldly stared at Zhuowen. "You are Luo Hong?" Zhuowen also stood up. His divine sense had already surpassed the starry sky. With Moyen Wushang's cultivation level, if he used his divine sense to investigate the former would not be able to detect it. But the moment his divine sense was extended, Moyen Wushang discovered it. Obviously, this was very unusual. Sure enough, when Zhuowen said Luo Hong, Moyen Wushang's face changed greatly. But soon, Moyen Wushang regained her calm. She smiled and said, "Sure enough, that bitch knew who really told you. Originally, I thought that after you found out that bitch's weakness, you wouldn't have the ability to kill her. At most, you would severely injure her, and she should be able to escape easily. I didn't expect that she would die in your hands. I have to say, I really underestimated you at the beginning." Zhuowen stared at Moyen Wushang with unkind eyes. His voice was no longer as gentle as before, and was filled with killing intent. "Luo Hong, you are very bold. You dare to possess Wushang's divine soul. Now, I'll give you a chance. Take the initiative to come out, and I won't kill you." Zhuowen said with killing intent. Moyen Wushang laughed and said, "You are really wishful thinking. You want me to leave her body and let you catch me alive? Zhuowen, now you have no choice. If you don't agree to my conditions, then Moyen Wushang will die in front of you. She did so many things for you in the past. She was devoted to you. You can't just watch her die like this." Zhuowen was silent. He faintly sighed and raised his head. He looked at Moyen Wushang and said, "Don't hurt Wushang. She has suffered so much. I don't want her to continue to suffer." Moyen Wushang's mouth revealed a subtle smile. She was about to speak when suddenly she felt a strong killing intent surging toward her. Immediately, a vast and incomparably terrifying divine sense rushed into the depths of her eyebrows like a tide. Chapter 3606. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn. The moment his divine soul rushed into Moyen Wushang's divine soul, he found a very faint red dot in a very obscure corner of Moyen Wushang's divine soul. When Moyen Wushang had just woken up, he had checked his divine soul. At that time, he did not find this red dot. However, he also thought that the reason why he could detect this red dot now was mainly because his divine soul was much stronger than before. The moment he found the red dot, Zhuowen's divine soul instantly turned into a big hand and swept through Moyen Wushang's divine soul world, grabbing the red dot. Puchi! After the red dot left Moyen Wushang's forehead, she spat out a mouthful of blood, and her whole body trembled. Zhuowen quickly put the red dot into the gold ring, then stepped over and caught Moyen Wushang. At this moment, Moyen Wushang was unconscious. Zhuowen took out a healing pill and fed it to her. After that, he picked her up and gently placed her on the bed. After doing this, Zhuowen walked out of the room. Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao were still outside. Why did you come out so quickly? Feng Xiao looked at Zhuowen in surprise and asked. Zhuowen smiled bitterly and said, "Something happened. Mother, send some servants to take care of Wushang. She is now unconscious." Hearing this, Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao were both shocked. How could Moyen Wushang be unconscious for no reason? However, the two of them did not ask much. Feng Xiao quickly went to arrange the servants. "Father, if Wushang wakes up, remember to inform me. I will go out first," Zhuowen said in a deep voice. Long Xiaotian nodded cautiously and then watched Zhuowen leave. Zhuowen once again returned to the ruins of the Nightmare Abyss. He flicked his finger and took out the red dot from the gold ring. As soon as the red dot appeared, a blurry shadow of a woman in red appeared. However, the woman in red was currently imprisoned by some kind of power and was unable to break free. "Damn it! Zhuowen, how can your soul be so powerful?" The woman in red suppressed her fear and roared in a low voice. "I've heard from Nu Wu that all of you are from the Nuwa clan." Zhuowen ignored Luo Hong's roar and asked his own question. He felt a sense of urgency in his heart. Before this, he had already encountered powerful beings from the alternate Ghost clan and the Huxley clan. Now, there was one more person from the Nuwa clan. Coupled with the covetous Golden Corner Starry Sky, Zhuowen knew that the wandering Starry Sky was already in a precarious situation. No matter which force it was, if they sent a large number of powerhouses to hovering Starry Sky, his Starry Sky would definitely be finished. Zhuowen wasn't particularly worried about the otherworldly Ghost clan and Huxley. As for the former, he only had some grudges with Bing Hui, and Bing Hui obviously didn't think about the primordial providence. Huxley, on the other hand, was eyeing the primordial providence of hovering Starry Sky. However, he was still observing and wouldn't really attack hovering Starry Sky for the time being. Among these forces, the Golden Corner Starry Sky was the least threatening one. Now, the sudden appearance of the Nuwa clan made Zhuowen somewhat worried. Obviously, Nu Wu and Luo Hong had come for merciless desireless. When Moyen Wushang had become a desireless, they had obviously set their sights on Moyen Wushang. If the Nuwa clan had only sent Nu Wu and Luo Hong, Zhuowen wouldn't have been worried. What he was really worried about was that the Nuwa clan would send other powerhouses to attack Moyen Wushang. If that was really the case, things would become complicated. "Since you know that I'm from the Nuwa clan, how dare you treat me like this? To tell you the truth, the Nuwa clan isn't something you can afford to offend. If you know what's good for you, you'd better let me go and hand over Moyen Wushang obediently. Perhaps you'll still have a chance to live." Luo Hong's eyes were filled with arrogance as she revealed her identity as a member of the Nuwa clan to make Zhuowen realize the seriousness of the situation. Unfortunately, Zhuowen didn't care about Luo Hong at all. Instead, He waved his hand, and a bolt of lightning fell on Luo Hong's divine soul. Luo Hong screamed in pain, and her face turned frighteningly pale. How dare you treat me like this? Aren't you afraid of death? Luo Hong shouted with hatred. You should be the one who's afraid now. I just need you to answer a few of my questions. As long as I'm satisfied, I'll give you a chance to reincarnate. Otherwise, I'll make your soul scatter. Zhuowen said with a cold look in his eyes. Luo Hong's body trembled. She could feel the killing intent emitted by Zhuowen when he said those words. She recalled that Nu Wu's aura had disappeared. She knew that this guy really dared to kill her. Ask away, Luo Hong said dejectedly. She already knew that Zhuowen definitely wouldn't let her go. Since she had a chance to reincarnate, she would naturally choose to reincarnate. She wouldn't really want her soul to scatter. Zhuowen said in a deep voice, Tell me about the so-called emotionless desireless. Luo Rainbow frowned slightly, then began to explain the entire plan of the Nuwa clan's merciless desireless. After listening to Luo Hong's story, Zhuowen's eyes turned gloomy. The Nuwa clan really did a lot of harm. In order to test out this emotionless desireless plan, they had harmed countless people in many lower realms. He also knew that Luo Hong was the person in charge of carrying out the emotionless desireless plan in this part of the universe. As for Nu Wu, she had a grudge against Luo Hong and had secretly followed her down. In the end, she had launched a sneak attack on Luo Hong and almost killed her. In the end, she had only left behind a faint trace of her divine soul. You said that there were 2 successful cases of emotionless desireless in this part of the universe. One of them was Wushang. Who was the other? Zhuowen asked. The other was the founder of the 6 Desires Palace. However, she wasn't as perfect as Moyan Wushang. Not long after she left the 6 Desires Palace, she couldn't control the power of emotionless and died. Luo Hong said calmly. Zhuowen nodded. He had indeed heard that the founder of the 6 Desires Palace had once succeeded in becoming an emotionless desireless. However, he hadn't expected that she was a failure. Aside from you, does anyone else in the Nuwa clan know that Wushang is emotionless? Zhuowen continued to ask. A hint of mockery appeared in Luo Hong's eyes. She laughed and said, Ha! When I found Moyan Wushang, I was already thinking of ways to contact the Nuwa clan. Do you think the Nuwa clan doesn't know? Zhuowen's eyes turned cold, and he clenched his fists. He knew that things had become really tricky now. Do you know how many people your Nuwa clan will send? Zhuowen asked coldly. How would I know? I'm only responsible for delivering the message. I only know that they received the message and received the coordinates I sent. Chapter 3607. Zhuowen silently watched as Luo Hong's divine soul turned into countless light spots and disappeared before his eyes. However, his expression became more and more unsightly. He had learned a lot from Luo Hong. In particular, the Nuwa clan already knew that Moyan Wushang was desireless. Soon, they would send experts to travel the starry sky. The shortest time would be more than 10 years, and the longest time would be about 100 years. Zhuowen took a deep breath, and his eyes became extremely gloomy. Before the Nuwa clan arrived, he had to improve his cultivation as soon as possible. With his current strength, it was already difficult for him to meet an opponent in the starry sky. However, he knew that this kind of strength was practically the lowest level of existence in the 100 territories outside of the world. The 100 territories were very big, far bigger than he had imagined. Just as Zhuowen was deep in thought, his communication jade talisman lit up. He checked his communication jade talisman and found that it was a message from Long Xiaotian. The message was that Moyan Wushang had awakened. Zhuowen stored it in the communication jade talisman and re-entered the outside world. When, you're here? Wushang is waiting for you in the room. When Zhuowen arrived outside Moyan Wushang's room, Feng Xiao just came out with a few maids. Thank you for your hard work, mother. Zhuowen said, we're all family. There's no need to thank me. Go in. Feng Xiao rolled her eyes at Zhuowen and urged Zhuowen to enter the room. Gently closing the door, Zhuowen came to the bedside and found Moyan Wushang half sitting on the bed. Brother Zhua, you've saved me again. Moyan Wushang turned to look at Zhuowen. His pale face revealed a touch of exhaustion. Zhuowen sat on the stool next to him. He grabbed Moyan Wushang's right hand and checked his body. After finding that Moyan Wushang's body was fine, he was relieved and immediately said seriously, Wushang, if you encounter anything in the future, don't hide it from us. Do you know how worried we were about you during this time? Moyan Wushang lowered his head and said softly, I'm sorry. Wushang made you guys worry. At this point, Moyan Wushang seemed to have thought of something. She raised her head and said hesitantly, Brother Zhua, that falling rainbow. Zhuowen smiled and said, it's already fine. That falling rainbow has already been dealt with by me. You will never be threatened by her again. Moyan Wushang was startled. Her beautiful eyes were filled with surprise. Although only a trace of Luo Hong's divine soul remained, Luo Hong was still a heaven-breaking realm powerhouse when she was alive. No matter how weak his divine sense was, it was basically impossible for cultivators below the heaven-crushing stage to kill him. But Zhuowen just had to deal with falling rainbow. This showed that the might of Zhuowen's strength already exceeded her imagination. But soon, Moyan Wushang's beautiful eyes dimmed. Although Luo Hong had been taken care of, her identity had been exposed to the Niwa clan by Luo Hong. Eventually, the Niwa clan would come for him. Although Zhuowen was strong, he was only a living being in the starry sky of the lower realm. Compared to a huge force like the Niwa clan in the outer realms, he was really insignificant. Once the Niwa clan powerhouses descended, Zhuowen would definitely not be a match for them. Zhuowen saw Moyan Wushang's worry and said with a smile, Wushang, don't worry. If the cultivators of the outer realms want to descend to the starry sky of the lower realm, there are cultivation restrictions. After they descend, they either cut off their own cultivation or use treasures to suppress their cultivation. As long as I'm still in this starry sky, I'm not afraid of anyone. Zhuowen's eyes were brimming with confidence that was hard to look at. In the chaotic starry sky, he might not be a match for a true heaven-breaking realm cultivator, but in the starry sky, he was not afraid at all. Even if the Niwa clan powerhouses brought a powerful heaven-breaking divine weapon, they could at most defeat him, but it would not be so easy to kill him. Moyan Wushang sighed and said, Brother Zhua, I know about this too. What I'm worried about now is that if the Niwa clan doesn't succeed, they might be angry and destroy the entire starry sky. Zhuowen shook his head and said, Wushang, don't worry. Although we're in the starry sky of the lower realm, it's still a part of the primordial tree. If it's really so easy to destroy, the fruits on the primordial tree would have been wiped out long ago. Zhuowen's eyes flashed with wisdom. He had contacted Su Yuan and learned a lot about the outside world. There were indeed peerless powerhouses in the outer realms who could destroy the starry sky of an entire realm. But there were not many of such powerhouses. They were basically the peerless powerhouses behind each clan. Such powerhouses would not easily take action unless it was an extremely important matter. Moreover, the price to pay for destroying the starry sky of the lower realm was extremely high. Very few peerless powerhouses would do something as arduous as destroying the starry sky of an entire realm. When Luo Hong told Moyan Wushang that the Niwa clan had the ability to destroy the starry sky of the lower realm, She was not lying, but she had exaggerated a lot. She just wanted to use this to intimidate Moyin Wushang. Moyin Wushang heaved a sigh of relief. The worry in his heart was finally relieved. Zhuowen was right. As long as they were still in the lower realm, the powerhouses of the outer realms could not do whatever they wanted. There were great restrictions. Zhuowen and Moyin Wushang chatted for a long time. When Moyin Wushang was tired, Zhuowen left. Before leaving the outside world, Zhuowen told Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao to take good care of Moyin Wushang during this period. The traces of Luo Hong's divine soul had been left in Moyin Wushang's divine soul for too long. She had been relying on Moyin Wushang's divine soul to recover. Therefore, Moyin Wushang's divine soul was still very weak. He had to slowly recuperate. After leaving the outside world, Zhuowen did not stay for long. He quickly left the Nightmare Nunnery. Soon, Zhuowen walked out of the Nightmare Nunnery and arrived at the entrance of the Nightmare Nunnery. At this moment, a green-furred corpse was sitting at the entrance. "Master!" The moment he saw Zhuowen, he immediately came forward and bowed respectfully. Zhuowen nodded. His gaze fell on the surroundings of the Nightmare Nunnery, and he frowned. This was because he realized that the darkness surrounding the Nightmare Nunnery had all disappeared. To be more precise, the environment of the entire Nightmare Abyss had changed. When he had first entered, the Nightmare Abyss was completely dark. Everywhere was filled with soul-stirring Yin winds. But now there was no Yin wind within the range of his divine sense. Green Hat clearly saw the doubt in Zhuowen's eyes. He said respectfully, "Master, not long after this lowly one and Rao Tianhan left the Nightmare Nunnery, the darkness of the entire Nightmare Abyss gradually receded. As for those souls that formed the Yin wind, when the darkness receded, they constantly howled and disappeared together. Perhaps the changes in the Nightmare Abyss are related to Master defeating the mysterious powerhouse in the depths of the Nightmare Nunnery." At this point, Green Hat looked at Zhuowen with even more reverence. The human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue in the depths of the Nightmare Nunnery was simply a nightmare to him. It was simply too strong. However, it was still easily defeated by Zhuowen. This made Green Hat full of admiration for Zhuowen. At the same time, his heart was filled with complicated feelings. Zhuowen took out the space-time roulette. After handing over control to Xiaohe, he rushed out of the Nightmare Abyss. Chapter 3608. The green-haired mummy was silent for a moment, then smiled bitterly and said, "Master, you're right. I'm related to Pangu, and it's not just a simple relationship." Zhuowen looked interested and signaled the green-haired mummy to continue. As everyone knows, Pangu has existed since the beginning of the universe. After Pangu fell, his soul turned into the 3 pure ones, and his flesh and blood essence turned into the 12 ancestors of sorcerers. But no one knows where Pangu's divine bones went. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and looked at the green-haired mummy. He said, "You mean you're transformed from Pangu's divine bones? But how could you look like this?" The green-haired mummy looked too creepy, like a zombie. It had nothing to do with divine bones. The green-haired mummy smiled bitterly and said, "It's true. The reason why I look like this is all because of Panga's resentment after his death. It's basically left in my bone marrow. I was turned into this by that resentment." Hearing this, Zhuowen revealed a thoughtful expression. He did not doubt the authenticity of the green-haired mummy's words. The latter had no reason to lie to him. Moreover, the green-haired mummy's words could explain why it had been looking for the ancestors of sorcerers' corpses. "When I first unsealed you, you already knew that I was cultivating the Panga sacred body, right? Why didn't you snatch it from me then?" Zhuowen asked the question in his heart. "Actually, I was planning to wait for your Pangu's sacred body to grow a little more before making a move on you. It's just that I didn't expect your speed of improvement to be so. Speaking of this, the green-haired mummy's eyes became more complicated. Zhuowen naturally knew what the green-haired mummy meant. His speed of improvement was so fast that even the green-haired mummy had to admit defeat. After a while, the space-time roulette had arrived at the entrance of the Nightmare Abyss. At the entrance of the Nightmare Abyss, there was a teleportation formation that was specially used to teleport people outside. Along the way, Zhuowen did not meet any cultivators. The entire Nightmare Abyss became dead silent. The green-haired mummy had told him about this. After the sinister winds in the Nightmare Abyss disappeared, so did the many treasures stored in this dangerous place. Many of the dangerous places of the past were no longer dangerous, but at the same time, there were no longer any treasures. Later, these treasure-seeking cultivators discovered that in every treasure land in the Nightmare Abyss, there was a black hole that could annihilate anything. In the past, before the Een wind disappeared, it had always been the Een wind that blocked these black holes. As soon as the wind disappeared, the powerful suction force of the black hole surged and sucked away all the treasures in the treasure land. The once treasured land had become a desolate and barren land. It was for this reason that the cultivators who were eager to enter the Nightmare Abyss to search for treasures had all left. The teleportation light flashed, and Zhuowen returned to the square from before. The square, which was supposed to be bustling with activity, was now much more deserted. As far as the eye could see, there were only sparse cultivators. The human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue in front of the square had also collapsed. Zhuowen knew that the collapse of the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue was related to Nu Wu's death. Fellow Taoist, Zhuo, you're finally out. As soon as Zhuowen appeared in the square, someone came to find him. 3 people walked towards him. Zhuowen was no stranger to them. They were Rao Tianhan, Mei Jinwen, and Tang Taihong, whom he had met in the Nightmare Abyss. The one who spoke just now was Rao Tianhan. Fellow Taoist, Rao, have the 3 of you been waiting for me outside? Zhuowen asked in surprise. He had been in seclusion in the Nightmare Nunnery for more than a year, and the Nightmare Abyss had undergone a huge change. He thought that Rao Tianhan and the others had left long ago, but he didn't expect to see them again. Rao Tianhan shook his head and said, "We've actually returned to Sanqing Street long ago. This time, we specially came to the Nightmare Abyss to inform Brother Zhuo. Brother Zhuo, you'd better not return to Sanqing Street now. Hide as far away as you can." Zhuowen was startled and asked in surprise, "What do you mean, fellow Taoist Rao? Did something happen to Sanqing Street?" Rao Tianhan sighed softly and said, "Something big has happened. The tower master of the Wu Tower in Flood Street, Wu Taiji, has already surrounded Sanqing Street. It's said that in 3 days, a big shot will descend. It's said to be a heaven-breaking realm existence. And he wants to capture you by name. We only found out about this after returning to Sanqing Street. If I didn't have a way to leave, I'm afraid we wouldn't have been able to leave Sanqing Street to inform you." Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. He thought of Bing Hui. Wu Taiji had been in contact with Bing Hui all these years. If not for Bing Hui's support, Wu Taiji wouldn't have surrounded Sanqing Street. Wouldn't this cause a huge battle between the 2 forces? Zhuowen cupped his fists at Rao Tianhan and said, "Thank you for coming personally to tell me this news." Rao Tianhan quickly waved his hand and said, "You don't have to be so polite, fellow Taoist Zhuo. You've saved us so many times, and we haven't been able to repay you. If we can't even do such a small thing, wouldn't we be ungrateful?" Zhuowen nodded and said calmly, "Fellow Taoist Rao, are you willing to return to Sanqing Street with me now?" As soon as these words were spoken, Rao Tianhan, Mei Jinwen, and Tang Taihong were stunned. The three of them had risked their lives to inform Zhuowen so that he could escape quickly. Why did Zhuowen want to return to Sanqing Street after thanking them? What kind of situation was this? Was he planning to go back and seek death? Don't worry, I'll take care of the Wu Tower and Flood Street. If they want to capture me, I'm afraid they'll have to prove their worth first. Zhuowen smiled. Rao Tianhan and the others were stunned. They thought of Zhuowen's performance in the depths of Nightmare Nunnery and knew that Zhuowen was very likely a fifth blight expert. However, they were worried about the descending Lord Bing Hui that Wu Taiji had mentioned. That was an expert who truly surpassed the stars. They didn't believe that Zhuowen could resist Lord Bing Hui. If the three of you don't want to go with me, I won't force you. Zhuowen saw the hesitation on the three's faces and didn't force them. Instead, he summoned the space-time wheel and planned to let Xiaohe rush to Sanqing Street. Wait, Rao Tianhan, am not someone who's afraid of death. Fellow Taoist, Zhuo has done me a great favor. Now that you're in trouble, how can I, Rao Tianhan, stay out of trouble? I'll go with you. With that, Rao Tianhan entered the space-time wheel's deck. Mei Jinwen and Tang Taihong looked at each other and finally gritted their teeth. They also entered the space-time wheel and expressed their willingness to go back together. Ha! The three of you are really heroes. I admire you. Chapter 3609. Within Three Purities Palace, Taoist Three Purities sat cross-legged on a cushion in front of a stone statue. His brows were slightly furrowed as he stared blankly at the courtyard in front of him. Master, is what Wu Taiji said true? Is Bing Hui going to descend in 3 days? Lian Meng stood beside the stone statue and couldn't help but ask when she saw Three Purities remain silent. Sanqing sighed softly and said, Yes, Bing Hui also sent me a message telling me to wait at Sanqing Street and not go anywhere. Is Bing Hui really that strong? Master, you've already reached the peak of the fifth blight and are already standing at the peak of this universe. Even Wu Taiji is nothing in front of you. Although Bing Hui is an outer realm cultivator, his cultivation will be restricted in the inner realm. He won't be able to display heaven breaker strength at all. Lian Meng's beautiful eyes frowned. You're right. Bing Hui will only be able to display peak fifth blight strength in our universe. However, you might not know this, but although his cultivation has been restricted, the shattered divine power in his body hasn't changed. A peak fifth blight cultivator with shattered divine power is much stronger than a peak fifth blight cultivator like me, who only has heavenly Tao energy. Three Purities' eyes were filled with helplessness as he continued. Bing Hui's background isn't low either. He definitely has a heaven breaker artifact and cultivates a heaven breaker cultivation technique. I'm no match for him. Lian Meng lowered her head, her beautiful eyes filled with bitterness. How could she not know that Three Purities was telling the truth? She was just hoping for a fluke. Unless I can break through to Heaven Breaker, Three Purities suddenly stood up, his eyes surging with an indescribable light. Master, do you have a way to break through in a short period of time? Lian Meng's beautiful eyes revealed a hint of joy. Three Purities' eyes shone as he looked into the distance outside the courtyard. He said in a low voice, Yes, the key to my breakthrough lies with Zhuowen. At this moment, the connection between Three Purities Street and the chaotic universe was surrounded by numerous figures. Upon closer inspection, these figures were all foreign races, and all of them were very powerful. Apart from the Sorcerer tribe, there were also experts from the Ghoul tribe, the Space-Time Beast tribe, the Dragon tribe, the Black Tiger tribe, the Phoenix people, and the Mermaid tribe leading this group of alien races. Ever since Wu Taiji spread the news that Ice Splendor would descend to the lower realm in 3 days, the entire Desolate Street was in an uproar. Zhuowen had killed the patriarchs of the ghouls, space-time beasts, dragons, black tigers, phoenix people, and merfolk. These 5 races had long been scared out of their wits by Zhuowen, so they had no intention of provoking Zhuowen. But now that they knew that Bing Hui had come down to the lower realm, their minds became active. They all responded to Wu Taiji's call and took the initiative to send troops to surround 3 clear streets. They knew that Zhuowen would be the first to die after Bing Hui descended to the lower realm. Zhuowen was already a dead man, so they didn't fear Zhuowen as much as they did in the beginning. It seems like there's no one left on 3 clear streets. We've already waited here for so long, but no one has come out. What a bunch of cowards. Within the Dragon Tribe team, a dragon man whose entire body was covered in dragon scales crossed his arms as a cold smile appeared on his face. I think they've all been scared out of their wits by Lord Bing Hui. Can't you see that Taoist 3 clear doesn't even dare to fart? As the dragon man spoke, the leader of the Black Tiger Tribe, a tiger-headed man, spoke, his eyes filled with arrogance and disdain. If Zhuowen was here, he would immediately recognize the dragon man and tiger-headed man. These 2 were Long Haoga and Hu Guanyu. When the Sorcerer Tribe, the Ghoul Tribe, the Space-Time Beast Tribe, the Dragon Tribe, the Black Tiger Tribe, the Phoenix People, and the Merfolk Tribe joined forces to attack him, they sent out 7 Third Blight experts to kill him. Hu Guanyu and Long Haoga were 2 of the 7. However, the 2 of them had escaped at the right time. They had chosen to escape during the battle between Zhuowen and Wu Heori. Thus, the 2 of them had managed to escape and were still free and unfettered even now. The 2 of them were the leaders of this siege on 3 clear streets. After all, Zhuowen had already killed quite a few of the true experts of the Desolate Streets. Hu Guanyu and Long Haoga could be considered top experts in the current Desolate Streets. This time, the 2 of them were leading the team under Wu Taiji's orders. In 3 days, Lord Bing Hui will descend to the lower realms. At that time, 3 clear streets will face destruction. Hu Guanyu's expression was filled with passion. It could be said that he held Bing Hui in high esteem. Long Haoga nodded and grinned. It's said that Lord Bing Hui's main target is Zhuowen. He descended to the lower realms to kill that Zhuowen. Thinking about it, that Zhuowen won't be able to be arrogant for much longer. Just as Long Haoga finished speaking, a cold voice came from the distance. Oh, did Bing Hui come for me? Long Haoga and Hu Guanyu were both stunned and involuntarily looked towards the source of the voice. In the distant starry sky, a streak of white light quickly flew over and arrived nearby in the blink of an eye. Only then did the 2 of them realize that this white light was a flying divine artifact. And on the flying divine artifact, there were a total of 5 figures. The person in the lead was a youth dressed in black. He sat upright on the deck of the flying divine artifact and was currently staring at Hu Guanyu and Long Haoga with bright eyes. Zhuowen, the instant Long Haoga and Hu Guanyu saw this figure, their entire bodies trembled, and a haze of fear rose up in their hearts. They couldn't help but recall the scene of encircling and suppressing Zhuowen back then, as well as Zhuowen's godlike, terrifying posture. The space-time roulette stopped not far away from the foreign race army, where Hu Guanyu and Long Haoga were. Zhuowen slowly stood up, looked down at the 2, and said indifferently, "Open a path, otherwise die." Zhuowen's voice was not loud, but it was filled with powerful dignity and coldness. Long Haoga and Hu Guanyu, as well as the foreign race army behind them, all felt their hearts tremble, and their eyes revealed fear. Long Haoga and Hu Guanyu's faces were ugly. They were completely unwilling to move aside, and let Zhuowen enter 3 Clear Street. But for some reason, when they saw Zhuowen's ice-cold eyes, the two of them did not dare to disobey the former's words. Hence, Hu Guanyu and Long Haoge, the two of them, slowly opened up a path under everyone's gazes. Under the lead of the two of them, the foreign race army also moved in unison to separate to the two sides. Zhuowen did not even look at Long Haoge and Hu Guanyu. The space-time roulette carried them, turned into a ray of flowing light, and drilled through the gap, instantly entering 3 Clear Street. My lords, are we going to let that Zhuowen in just like that? If Tower Lord Wu finds out, a general quietly came to Hu Guanyu and Long Haoge's side and reminded them in a low voice. Humph. It doesn't matter if this kid enters 3 Clear Street or not. Moreover, if he enters now, it will be easier for us to find him. When Lord Bing Hui arrives, where can he hide? Long Haoge said coldly. When the general heard this, he felt that Long Haoge's words made sense. He excused himself and left. Fellow Zhua, this Hu Guanyu and Long Haoge seem to be very afraid of you. After entering 3 Clear Street, Rao Tianhan asked curiously, Chapter 3610. Fellow Taoist Zhua, you're really back? Not long after Zhuowen and the others entered 3 Purity Street, a little Taoist boy hurriedly ran over. His little pink face was flushed with excitement. Are you the little Taoist boy from 3 Purity's Palace? Under Zhuowen's puzzled gaze, Rao Tianhan recognized the little Taoist boy and could not help but ask, So it's senior brother Rao. The little Taoist boy stopped and bowed to Rao Tianhan and the others. His eyes were fixed on Zhuowen as he said excitedly, Fellow Taoist, Zhua, our master has been waiting for you. Are you talking about the 3 Purities? Zhuowen asked calmly. Yes, my master asked me to invite you to 3 Purities' Palace. He said he has something important to discuss with you. The little Taoist boy said with a smile. Zhuowen did not reply. Instead, he turned around and cupped his hands to Rao Tianhan and the others. Fellow Taoist Rao, fellow Taoist Mei, and fellow Taoist Tang, I have to go to 3 Purities' Palace first, so let's part ways here. The 3 of them also cupped their fists to Zhuowen. Rao Tianhan said, Fellow Taoist Zhua, 3 Purity Street is already a place of trouble. I hope you can leave as soon as possible. Zhuowen smiled and nodded. He did not answer. Instead, he said to the little Taoist boy in front of him, Little brother, lead the way. The little Taoist boy smiled brightly and skipped in front to lead the way. The green-haired corpse saw that Zhuowen was really following the little Taoist boy and frowned slightly. However, he still followed closely behind Zhuowen. Master, the 3 Purities were formed by Panga's divine soul. Panga's sacred body is also greatly beneficial to him. You have to be very careful. The green-haired corpse could not help but send a voice transmission to Zhuowen. Of course I know. However, do you think that the 3 pure ones would be able to defeat me if they were really plotting something against me? Zhuowen sent a voice transmission as he walked. The green-haired corpse was stunned and immediately shook his head and laughed. He was worried for nothing. With Zhuowen's strength, he was already invincible in this part of the universe. Taoist 3 Purities might be strong, but he was probably not a match for Zhuowen. 3 Purities and Lian Meng stood in front of 3 Purities' Palace's gate. When 3 Pure Ones saw the 2 figures walking over slowly from the foot of the mountain, a smile appeared on his face. Fellow Taoist, Zhua is brought here. The little Taoist boy walked to the Purities. 3 Pure Ones stroked the little Taoist boy's head and smiled faintly at Zhua when he was slowly walking over. Zhuowen, you're here. Shua, if you have something to say it. I'm pressed for time. Zhuo Wen said indifferently. The three purities were not angered by Zhuo Wen's vile attitude. He pondered for a moment and said, I'm sure you already know about the Ice Radiance lower realm. Zhuo Wen nodded and looked at Three Purities' palace, waiting for him to continue. Bing Hui is here for you. Once he comes down, the first person he will look for will be you. You are no match for Bing Hui. I'm the only one who can save you. Zhuo Wen raised his eyebrows and said with interest, Oh, how will you save me? Three Purities' palace pointed at the green-haired corpse behind Zhuo Wen and said, Give me the green-haired corpse and your Pangu's sacred body, and I can take the last step to the Heaven-breaker realm. Once I can successfully advance, I will be able to use the strength of a Heaven-breaker realm cultivator in this part of the universe. However, Bing Hui is an outsider, and his strength is suppressed. He is no match for me. Even if Bing Hui wants to kill you, he will have to go through me. Zhuo Wen fell silent and looked at Three Purities' palace. Although he knew that Three Purities' palace was up to no good, he didn't expect that Three Purities' palace wanted his Pangu's sacred body and the green-haired corpse. Old bastard, do you think I don't know what you are thinking? My master won't listen to your nonsense. The green-haired corpse said angrily. Zhuo Wen raised his hand to stop the green-haired corpse and looked at Three Purities' palace. Is the last corpse of the 12 ancestral sorcerers, Dijiang, in your hands? Three Purities' palace nodded. Yes, if your Pangu's sacred body fuses with Dijiang, it will reach the perfection stage. But even so, its strength is at most comparable to a cultivator in the late stage of the fifth decay. But if you give me the Pangu's sacred body and the green-haired corpse, I will have an 80% chance of successfully advancing. At that time, Bing Hui won't be able to do anything to you. This is your only way out. Zhuo Wen said calmly, What if I say no? Three Purities' palace's eyes darkened. He sneered. You are not qualified to say no now. Lian Meng could not help but persuade. Zhuo Wen, Bing Hui will descend to the mortal world in 3 days. At that time, he will definitely find you. Only my master can help you now. As long as you agree to help him break through, he can help you block Bing Hui and save your life. Zhuo Wen looked at Lian Meng indifferently. He did not say anything. Instead, he turned around and walked down the mountain. However, he had only taken a few steps when the stone steps around him began to become strange. A vast array formation rippled in the surroundings and completely enveloped him. Zhuo Wen stopped and turned to look at Three Purities' palace. He said calmly, Three Purities' palace, what is the meaning of this? Three Purities' palace looked down at Zhuo Wen and said, I said, you are not qualified to say no now. Hand over the Pangu's sacred body and the green-haired corpse. I promise you that I'll help you block Bing Hui and let you live. Not qualified, Zhuo Wen suddenly laughed. His laughter was extremely arrogant and wild. The green-haired corpse stood behind Zhuo Wen and watched coldly. It also secretly sneered. Three Purities' palace frowned. He could not understand. They had already reached this point, but Zhuo Wen could still laugh. Did he not know that he was in danger? But soon, Three Purities' palace felt an inconceivable power explode from the array below. Soon after, he discovered that wisps of white flames were surging out of Zhuo Wen's body. The flames were too hot. They instantly covered the steps in front of the mountain gate. Ka. The vast array ripples that had originally enveloped the steps were completely destroyed by the white flames. This ghastly white flame even turned into a white snake. It attacked quickly and charged towards the three pure ones in front of the door. I didn't expect you to have the ultimate in fire. But don't you know that the ultimate Een fire might have some effect on early-stage fifth blight cultivators, but it is useless against peak fifth blight cultivators like me? Three Purity's Palace stood calmly in place. He gently waved the horsetail whisk in his hand, and a purple power floated out. The moment the extreme Hanin fire encountered this power, it was immediately extinguished and continuously disappeared. When all the ultimate Een fire had completely dissipated, Three Purity's Palace looked down at Zhuowen with a hint of mockery in his eyes. However, the mockery on his face was quickly replaced by shock. Chapter 36:11. The golden light between Zhuowen's brows burned brighter and brighter. Finally, Zhuowen let out a long roar as the golden light left his body and transformed into a golden divine sword. Boundless sword intent swept forth. It was far too terrifying, and the entire Mount Three Clear was trembling. Whoosh! The golden divine sword was extremely fast. In a flash, it charged towards Sanqing. Sanqing lashed out with his horsetail whisk. The sound of metal clashing could be heard as his horsetail whisk was destroyed. The golden divine sword was unstoppable. In the blink of an eye, it had pierced into his forehead. Splat! Sanqing spat out a mouthful of blood. His expression changed drastically as he hurriedly sat down cross-legged on the ground. He began to circulate the power of his consciousness to block the erosion of the golden divine sword. Master! Lian Meng snapped out of her daze and hurried to Sanqing's side. The little Taoist child's expression also changed drastically as he followed Lian Meng. However, just as the two of them approached Sanqing, a powerful force surged from Sanqing's body and sent the two of them flying. Don't come any closer. Three Pure Ones closed his eyes and panted as he finished speaking. He didn't say another word, but his expression was extremely unsightly. Cold sweat poured down his forehead. Like crazy. Thud, thud, thud. The crisp sound of footsteps slowly traveled over. Zhuowen slowly walked up the stairs and arrived in front of Sanqing. The green-furred mummy followed behind Zhuowen with a hint of disdain in its eyes. Taoist Sanqing, you've overestimated yourself. You don't even know how powerful my master is, yet you dare to attack him. Sanqing endured the pain in his consciousness and opened his eyes. He looked up at Zhuowen and said in a low voice, Zhuowen, it looks like I've underestimated you. I really didn't think that your strength had already reached such a level. Zhuowen looked at Sanqing in silence. He was quite surprised. He hadn't used his full strength when he unleashed the sword intent of his consciousness. Instead, he had only used 50% of it. The power of the consciousness sword intent condensed from 50% of his consciousness was infinitely close to the heaven-crushing stage, but it was also far more powerful than the peak of the fifth heaven's blight. Zhuowen had originally thought that the consciousness sword intent would be enough to kill Sanqing. However, it seemed that Sanqing's consciousness was much more powerful than he had imagined. Zhuowen, are you going to kill me now? Three Pure Ones took a deep breath, endured the pain, and suppressed his voice. Zhuowen looked down at Sanqing and said indifferently, You were the one who wanted to kill me. I was merely retaliating. However, I originally thought you wouldn't be able to kill you. But I didn't expect. When he spoke up to hear, Zhuowen stretched out his hand and continued. Hand over Dizhang's corpse. Three Pure One's eyes flickered. In the end, he let out a long sigh and simply took out Dizhang's corpse. When Dizhang's corpse appeared in midair, Zhuowen waved his sleeve and swept it into his great world. After doing all that, Zhuowen ignored the three purities and directly stepped into the Three Purities Palace. HHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHThen, the doors to the hall closed. Sanqing looked at the closed doors and sighed. His eyes were filled with shock and complicated emotions. Even now, he was still dumbfounded. Zhuo had actually become so strong all of a sudden. This truly shocked him. Master, are you all right? Lian Meng and the little Taoist child crawled up again and quietly walked to a place relatively close to the three Pure Ones. Three Pure Ones looked at Lian Meng and the little Taoist child with a bitter smile and said, I've barely managed to suppress that power, but my soul has been severely damaged. I'm afraid I can only use 30% of my power now. Lian Meng and the little Taoist child's pupils shrank. They were in disbelief. They didn't expect San Qing to be so severely injured. Zhuo, has he really become so powerful? Lian Meng asked bitterly after a moment of silence. San Qing sighed. His cultivation isn't high, but his consciousness is extremely powerful. I'm guessing that his consciousness has probably broken through the heavens. I'm afraid no one in this universe is his match. Lian Meng's beautiful eyes lit up when she heard this, and she said, Master, doesn't that mean that Zhuo possesses the strength to fight Bing Hui? If Bing Hui really comes to San Qing Street in 3 days, we won't have to fear him. San Qing shook his head. That's impossible. I'm guessing things will get worse. Zhuo's cultivation isn't high. It's just that his consciousness is powerful. Think about it. Bing Hui is a heaven breaker expert. His consciousness must also be at the heaven breaker level. He doesn't fear Zhuo at all. Plus, his strength is terrifyingly powerful. He has shattering divine power. His consciousness isn't afraid of Zhuo, and his strength can crush Zhuo. If Zhuo and Bing Hui really fight, who do you think will win? Lian Meng and the little Taoist boy looked at each other and saw the worry in each other's eyes. San Qing's analysis was correct. Zhuo's strength was indeed strong, but it was only in the aspect of his consciousness. To Bing Hui, who was originally at the heaven-breaking tier, Zhuo's divine soul attacks wouldn't have much of an advantage over the former. What they didn't know was that Zhuo's consciousness was very mysterious and powerful. It wasn't something an ordinary heaven breaker expert's consciousness could compare to. Let's go. Help me to the side hall. San Qing struggled to get up. With the help of Lian Meng and the little Taoist boy, he reluctantly walked toward the side hall. The main hall was already occupied by Zhuo. They didn't dare to enter. In the main hall, Zhuo communicated with his clone in the Great World. He asked his clone to go to the place where Di Jiang and CZ's corpses were kept. He asked him to extract the goo worms from the corpses and integrate them into his body, allowing the Panga's sacred body to evolve. To be honest, Zhuo didn't have much expectations for the Panga's sacred body. From San Qing, he knew that the Panga's sacred body's strength was only comparable to the strength of a late-stage 5th decay expert. After all, in the ancient era, Panyu's peak cultivation was infinitely close to breaking through the heavens. In the end, he didn't break through the heavens. As for the Panga's sacred body that was inherited from Panyu, it was naturally impossible to cultivate it to the strongest state. However, Zhuo was full of expectations for his main body. After his main body's consciousness merged with the primordial stone, he knew that his main body's future path would be limitless, especially when his main body's cultivation broke through to the heaven breaker level. He would be able to cultivate the true primordial technique. At that time, his cultivation would advance by leaps and bounds, and his strength would undergo a transformation. Of course, his clone wasn't useless. At least in the future, when his main body really left Panyu, his clone could stay in Panyu to protect Ryuka. My cultivation is already at the peak of the 3rd decay. I'm only half a step away from the 4th decay. Zhuo's eyes flashed. When he advanced to the 3rd decay, the ultimate Hanin flame, a terrifying tribulation that could injure a fifth decay cultivator, had appeared. Then, wouldn't the fourth decay be even more terrifying? It might even injure a heaven-breaker cultivator. Thinking of this, Zhuowen's eyes became blazing. In 3 days, Bing Hui would descend here. If he could cultivate to the fourth decay in these 3 days, he would be able to use the fourth decay. Chapter 36:12. I'll try to reach the edge of a breakthrough in these 3 days. Zhuowen took a deep breath and took out several chaos crystals from his great world. He could feel that he was still some distance away from the fourth blight. If he wanted to reach the edge of a breakthrough earlier, he could only rely on chaos crystals. 3 days passed quickly. 3 pure ones brought Lian Meng and the little Taoist child out of the side hall. 3 pure one's face was still pale, and his body looked very weak. There were still terrifying sword scars left by the divine soul sword intent in his divine soul. Those sword scars were too strong and stubborn. 3 pure ones estimated that with his current divine soul power, it would take him at least 10 years to completely remove the sword scars. If he had the assistance of a divine soul recovery pill, the time would be greatly shortened. Lian Meng's beautiful eyes fell on the main hall's door. A trace of hesitation and fear appeared in her eyes. Lian Meng, go knock on the door. 3 pure ones said softly. Lian Meng bit her teeth and nodded. She came to the front of the hall and knocked. Zhuowen, the 3 days are up. Creak. The door slowly opened. The person who appeared in front of Lian Meng was not Zhuowen, but the green-furred corpse. Where's Zhuowen? Lian Meng could not help but ask doubtfully when she saw that Zhuowen was not behind the green-furred corpse. My master is still in seclusion. He still needs some time. I'll go with you first. The green-furred corpse stepped out of the hall and gently closed the door. Then he strode toward 3 pure ones. Lian Meng frowned slightly and said in a deep voice, "What's Zhuowen doing inside? Is he cramming at the last minute? Why is he still in seclusion in 3 days? Could it be that he's running away because he's scared?" The green-furred corpse sneered. "My master is not like your master. Even if 3 pure ones ran away, he would not run away." Lian Meng's beautiful eyes were filled with anger. However, 3 pure ones stopped her. "Let's go." 3 pure ones ignored the green-furred corpse and led Lian Meng and the little Taoist child toward Mount 3 pure ones. The green-furred corpse sneered and lazily followed behind 3 pure ones. However, the green-haired mummy was a little nervous. He had also heard of Bing Hui. It was said that he was an elite from the outer realm, an existence at the heaven-breaking realm. Although he knew that Zhuowen was very strong, he wasn't sure if Zhuowen could win against Bing Hui. Thinking about how miserable Zhuowen's fate would be if he died at Bing Hui's hands, his heart was filled with hesitation and fear. When 3 purities walked down 3 purities mountain, he found that 3 purities street was already filled with cultivators. These were all human cultivators from 3 purities street. They were basically gathered at the foot of 3 purities mountain, waiting for the 3 purities. All the cultivators on 3 Clear Street had heard about Bing Hui. They knew that the powerful cultivator from the outer realm, Bing Hui, would personally come to 3 Clear Street today. Back then, this news had caused waves of panic in 3 Clear Street. The reason why they had gathered at the base of Mount 3 Purities was because they had placed all of their hopes on Taoist 3 Purities. After all, Taoist 3 Purities was the most powerful person in 3 Purities Street, and in fact, in the entire Heavenspan realm. 3 Purities, you've come down. I've received news that Bing Hui has successfully arrived. He's now in the Shaman Tower on Chaos Street. I think he'll come to 3 Clear Street soon. At this moment, a muscular middle-aged man in a black robe arrived in front of 3 Purities. If Zhuowen were present, He wouldn't be unfamiliar with this black-robed man's aura. It was the Black King who had brought him to the slaughter realm. After saying this, the Black King looked doubtfully at the green-haired mummy behind 3 Purities. His eyes were filled with dread. He could feel that the green-haired mummy's aura was extremely strong. It wasn't inferior to his at all. It should also be an elite at the peak of the 4th blight. 3 Purities nodded and coughed. His face was still pale. The Black King saw that 3 Purities wasn't in a good state. He frowned and said, "You are injured?" 3 Purities said in a low voice, "Something happened at 3 Purities' palace. Don't tell anyone about this. If Binghui comes, I'll deal with him." The Black King's frown deepened. He looked deeply at 3 Purities. He could clearly see that the 3 pure ones had been injured by someone, and this caused his heart to become unsettled. 3 Purities was an elite at the peak of the 5th blight. Who could hurt him? Okay. Although he was puzzled, the Black King still agreed. Boom. At this moment, a shocking explosion came from the end of 3 Purities Street that connected to the chaotic cosmos. The terrifying energy spread, and the entire 3 Purities Street trembled violently. 3 Purities, Lord Binghui is here in person. Get over here and greet him. An arrogant voice resounded through the entire 3 Purities Street. It was deafening. Wu Taiji. 3 Purities' eyes were dark. He recognized the owner of the voice. Let's go. 3 Purities took a deep breath and led the way to the end of 3 Purities Street. Lian Meng, the little Taoist child, and the Black King followed closely behind, followed by the cultivators of 3 Purities Street. Among this group of cultivators, Zhuowen was more familiar with Rao Tianhan, Mei Jinwen, Tang Taihong, Jiang Ruisi, Du Huacan, and others. However, their eyes were filled with worry. At this moment, most of the areas at the end of 3 Purities Street were in ruins. The foreign race army swarmed in, led by a pale-faced man in ice armor. He was Binghui. Wu Taiji followed closely behind Binghui with a flattering smile. In addition, there were 3 foreign race experts who stood in a similar position as Wu Taiji. They followed behind Binghui. The auras of these 3 foreign race experts were extremely powerful. They were not weaker than the 7 patriarchs who had encircled Zhuowen the second time. These 3 people were also patriarch-level experts in the Desolate Street. They were the patriarchs of the Moon Wolf race, the Nine-Tailed Fox race, and the Giant Turtle race. These 3 races had always maintained a neutral attitude towards Zhuowen. Back then, when Wu Taiji had encircled Zhuowen twice, these 3 races basically did not make a move. However, now that Binghui had personally come, they knew that they could not continue to maintain a neutral attitude. Otherwise, they would not give Binghui face. When the time came, he could crush any of them and their families with a single finger. Binghui clasped his hands behind his back and raised his chin. He looked around 3 Purities Street with a trace of killing intent surging in his eyes. Back then, he had chased Zhuowen all the way to the sky-accessing secret land. He had thought that he could get rid of the ant quickly and neatly, but he did not expect that the ant was so cunning that he had managed to hide from his eyes. However, Binghui was very confident that he would definitely kill the ant this time. Last time, he had made a great contribution when he brought Sakyamuni back. The Ice Demon King not only helped him recover his cultivation, but also gave him an opportunity to improve his cultivation. This time, he had come to the mortal world under the request of his junior brother, Sakyamuni, to hide it from the Ice Demon King. The treasure that suppressed his cultivation was also requested by Sakyamuni from the Ice Demon King. It had to be said that the Ice Demon King really loved Sakyamuni. He would grant Sakyamuni any request. Chapter 36:13. Are you sure Zhuowen is on Sanqing Street? Bing Hui asked Wu Taiji, looking arrogantly at Sanqing Street with his hands behind his back. Wu Taiji lowered his head and came to Bing Hui's side. He said respectfully, "Absolutely. My men saw Zhuowen enter Sanqing Street with their own eyes, and he hasn't come out since." Bing Hui nodded and walked slowly toward the inside of Sanqing Street. Wu Taiji and the alien army followed closely behind. Taoist 3 Purities, manager of Sanqing Street, greets Lord Bing Hui. Bing Hui hadn't gone far when a vigorous voice came from the front of the street. Just a moment later, they saw Taoist 3 Purities leading a group of cultivators from the 3 Purities street towards them. 3 Purities took the lead and kept a distance from Bing Hui. He cupped his hands and bowed to Bing Hui. Bing Hui said indifferently, 3 Purities, do you know your crime? 3 Purities' heart skipped a beat. He lowered his head and said, Lord Bing Hui, I don't know what you mean. Bang! As soon as 3 Purities finished speaking, a wave of power swept over. Then the ground under their feet cracked. A huge ice crystal hand broke out of the ground and grabbed 3 Purities, holding him in the air. Uffed! 3 Purities spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were filled with shock and anger. He didn't expect Bing Hui to attack him without saying anything. Master, Lian Meng and the little Taoist boy's expressions changed drastically. They hurried toward the ice hand. However, the ice hand emitted a terrifying chill. As soon as they got close, they were attacked by the chill. Their hands and feet were frozen into ice. Fortunately, the Black King reacted in time and pulled them out. His expression was grave. Although he was at the peak of the 4th blight, he still felt the aura of death from the ice hand. He knew very well that if he was caught by the ice hand, he would end up worse than 3 Purities. The cultivators of Sanqing Street, who followed them, were all shocked. They couldn't help but take a few steps back. Their eyes were filled with horror. 3 Purities, the strongest in the heaven-accessing realm, had been defeated by this person with one hand. He was too strong. Who else in Sanqing Street could fight against him? On the other hand, Wu Taiji and the others were even more in awe. Interesting? You're actually injured. No wonder he couldn't even withstand a single blow. Bing Hui glanced at the 3 Pure Ones. He was surprised, but he soon calmed down and continued, I heard that Zhuowen is in your 3 Pure Ones street. Give me that Zhuowen, and I won't trouble your 3 Pure Ones street. As soon as these words came out, the cultivators of the entire 3 Clear Street were in an uproar. This person barged into our Sanqing Street because of that Zhuowen? Damn it, was this Zhuowen a troublemaker? How dare they bring disaster to the streets of the 3 Pure Ones? What about Zhuowen? It's all his fault. Why should we be the scapegoat? Hurry up and get out here. Many cultivators on 3 Purities Street began to jeer. Filled with righteous indignation, they asked Zhuowen to come out and stop harming their street. Rao Tianhan, Mei Jinwen, and Tang Taihong, who were mixed in the crowd, frowned. They looked at each other and remained silent. The 3 of them knew that Zhuowen had gone to the 3 Pure Ones' palace. However, they owed Zhuowen a favor, so they couldn't expose Zhuowen now. I know where that Zhuowen is. I know. Suddenly, someone in the crowd spoke. All of a sudden, the clamor of the cultivators on 3 Purities Street quieted down. Their gazes landed on the cultivator who had spoken. Even Bing Hui was sizing up the person who spoke with great interest. It was a middle-aged man with dark eyes. His aura wasn't strong, and he was probably only at the 1st blight. At this moment, being stared at by everyone, his face was slightly pale, and he didn't know what to say. Come here. Bing Hui waved at the man and said indifferently. The middle-aged man's face was pale. He hesitated, But in the end, he walked towards Bing Hui. "Where is that Zhuowen?" Bing Hui asked after the middle-aged man walked closer. He's on 3 Pure Ones Mountain. I saw Rao Tianhan, Mei Jinwen, and Tang Taihong return with that Zhuowen at the entrance of 3 Pure Ones Street. Later, he followed Taoist 3 Pure Ones to 3 Pure Ones Mountain. The middle-aged man trembled. Rao Tianhan and the other two turned pale. They cursed in their hearts and began to secretly retreat, planning to leave. They knew that if this person exposed them, Bing Hui would definitely come looking for them. "Oh, 3 Pure Ones, you old bastard. You're really going against me. You knew that I was looking for that Zhuowen, but not only did you not report it, you even brought him to 3 Pure Ones Mountain. Do you take me for a fool?" Bing Hui looked at 3 Pure Ones coldly and clenched his fist. 3 Pure Ones immediately let out a miserable howl as his body was drenched in blood. After the battle with Zhuowen, his injuries were too severe. He couldn't use his strength at all. He was a soft persimmon that Bing Hui could pinch however he wanted. And what about Rao Tianhan, Mei Jinwen, and Tang Taihong? How dare they come into contact with that Zhuowen? They're courting death. As Bing Hui spoke, his gaze fell on the people of 3 Pure Ones Street. "They're here. Rao Tianhan, Mei Jinwen, and Tang Taihong are all here." Someone in the crowd suddenly spoke. Soon after, 3 streaks of light shot out from the crowd and flew into the distance. However, before the 3 streaks of light could go far, another ice hand broke out of the ground and accurately grabbed the 3 streaks of light, pinching them in its palm. When the hand of ice loosened, there were 3 more ice sculptures in its palm. Upon closer inspection, they were the faces of Rao Tianhan, Mei Jinwen, and Tang Taihong. "Wu Taiji, come with me to 3 Pure Ones Mountain." Bing Hui slowly walked forward after speaking. His target was 3 Pure Ones Mountain in the distance. Wherever Bing Hui passed, the cultivators of 3 Pure Ones Street automatically opened a path for him. They all looked at Bing Hui in horror. Wu Taiji and the 3 ancestors of the Nine-Tailed Fox clan, the Moonwolf clan, and the Giant Turtle clan followed closely behind. Escort all the cultivators of 3 Pure Ones Street to 3 Pure Ones Mountain. Wait for Lord Bing Hui to deal with them later. Wu Taiji transmitted his voice to a general of the shaman tribe. After Bing Hui and the others walked out of the area of 3 Pure Ones Street, the latter commanded the foreign tribe army to follow behind them. The Black King silently protected Lian Meng and the little Taoist child. He just followed behind silently. Both Bing Hui and Wu Taiji had noticed him long ago. They just hadn't made a move. The Black King didn't dare to escape. If he did, Wu Taiji would take him down first without Bing Hui's help. The Black King originally planned to release 3 Pure Ones from the ice hand. However, he had tried before. With his strength, he couldn't break the ice hand at all. He could only watch as 3 Pure Ones were imprisoned by the ice hand. At the foot of the mountain, the green-furred corpse naturally saw Bing Hui and the others. Chapter 36:14. "My lord, do you need me to take care of that guy for you?" Wu Taiji asked Bing Hui when he saw the green-haired mummy running towards Sanqing Mountain. He's just an ant. As long as he doesn't escape Sanqing Street, his fate is sealed." And judging by his panicked look, he's probably going to inform Zhuowen. Bing Hui's lips curled into a sinister smile as he spoke carelessly. Wu Taiji nodded and didn't mention it again. Instead, he followed Bing Hui like a servant. The green-haired mummy soon arrived at Sanqing Palace and immediately ran towards the main hall. However, just as he was about to open the door to the main hall, a terrifying energy suddenly came from within. Crack! The door of the palace was directly shattered. The green-furred corpse was caught off guard and was struck by the force. It was sent flying and smashed into the ground. The mummy coughed dryly and struggled to get up. He looked at the door. Then, a figure slowly walked out from the broken door. This figure was none other than Zhuo. His eyes were bright and full of spirit, like two small suns. They emitted a scorching light that was difficult to look at directly. Zhuo looked at the green-haired mummy on the ground and said flatly, "Bing Hui is here?" The mummy hurriedly got up and walked to Zhuo's side. He said with some fear, "Yes, that Bing Hui is very strong. Master, I think it's best for us to leave now." "Leave? Why should we leave?" Zhuo's gaze was gloomy and cold as he flicked his sleeve. Instantly, numerous formation flags shot out. These formation flags landed at the edge of the Three Purities Palace and soon disappeared. A faint ripple of formation spread out. Zhuo wiped away the formation ripple and walked to the mountain gate. He looked down at Bing Hui's group, slowly walking up the stairs. Down below, he saw not only the outsider army, but also the human cultivators who were surrounded by the outsider army. "You're Zhuo?" Bing Hui asked calmly when he looked up and saw a young man standing in front of the mountain gate. "Did Sakyamune send you here?" Zhuo didn't answer Bing Hui's question. Instead, he asked a question. "What do you think?" Bing Hui sneered and said to Wu Taiji beside him, "You go and capture him. A mere peak third blight, and I think you can easily take him down." Wu Taiji grinned and said, "Don't worry, Your Excellency. Taking down this bastard is nothing difficult for me." As he spoke, Wu Taiji stepped forward step by step. His speed became faster and faster as he rushed towards the mountain gate. As he approached the mountain gate, Wu Taiji's aura became more and more terrifying. His body also gradually became larger, as if some kind of ferocious beast was awakening in his body. Wu Taiji made his move. He was at the late stage of the fifth blight, and his strength was second only to Sir 3 Pure Ones. This Zhuo is really finished. This Zhuo is really a scourge. He has harmed our entire Sanqing Street. He clearly knows that he has offended Lord Bing Hui, yet he still returned to 3 Clear Street. This is clearly a trap. It would be best if Wu Taiji killed him in one move. At the foot of Sanqing Mountain, a large group of human cultivators also saw Wu Taiji make his move. They discussed spiritedly, and surprisingly all wanted Zhuo to be killed quickly. I can't help Zhuo even if I want to." The Black King sighed softly. He knew that Zhuo had no chance of surviving under Wu Taiji's hands. "Uncle Black King, Zhuo isn't as weak as you think. The unlucky one this time should be Wu Taiji." Lian Meng suddenly spoke, her beautiful eyes shining brightly. "Oh." The Black King bitterly smiled and shook his head. He felt that Lian Meng was dreaming. At this moment, Wu Taiji's aura had risen to the extreme, and he was already close to Zhuo. He saw that Zhuo was still standing in the same place, indifferent. He thought that Zhuo was scared silly, and a cruel smile appeared on his face. "Little bastard, die for me." Wu Taiji suddenly leaped, his entire body erupting with a blazing golden light. All the acupoints on his body erupted with endless multicolored light. A terrifying aura came crashing down like a dark cloud. The entire Sanqing Mountain seemed to be suppressed by this aura and began to tremble violently. Boom! In the blink of an eye, Wu Taiji had already arrived in front of Zhuo. He formed a fist with his right hand and punched out, aiming directly at Zhuo's face. Wu Taiji didn't hold back and didn't dare to be careless. Zhuo was able to escape from 2 encirclements of the foreign races. It was clear that he had a strong foundation and strength. When Wu Taiji's fist came closer and closer, Zhuowen's eyes slowly narrowed. He took a step forward, his right hand forming a fist. All the muscles on his body swelled as he fiercely punched out. Bang, bang, bang. In an instant, the golden and purple light collided, exploding into countless specks of light that scattered in all directions. Terrifying ripples of energy spread out, causing Sanqing Mountain to tremble even more violently. Countless cracks actually appeared on the surface of the mountain. Sanqing Mountain was created by Taoist three purities after all. It was no ordinary mountain, but a divine mountain. It was abnormally tough and wouldn't be so easily destroyed. But now it had almost been destroyed. From this, one could see just how terrifying the clash between Zhuowen and Wu Taiji was. Bing, Hui stood where he was and waved his sleeve. Instantly, the entire Sanqing Mountain was frozen by a cold aura. The mountain that had been on the verge of collapse was completely stabilized. As for the picturesque Sanqing Mountain, it was transformed into a vast expanse of snowy white. Splurt! Suddenly, a figure flew out from the peak of the mountain. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell in a parabola. Everyone's eyes narrowed when they saw this figure. They discovered that this figure was actually the head of the Tower of Shamans, Wu Taiji, the #1 expert of the desolate street. Is that all you've got? A voice rang out from the peak of the mountain to everyone's stupefied gazes. Zhuowen leapt up and instantly closed in on Wu Taiji. Zhuowen's right knee slammed into Wu Taiji's spine. With a crack, Wu Taiji's spine shattered. Wu Taiji screamed and flew into the sky. Boom, boom, boom. Zhuowen kicked out and caught up to Wu Taiji. His fists were like lightning as they landed on Wu Taiji's body. At this moment, Zhuowen's entire body was covered in a purple haze. The power of his fist was extremely terrifying, like numerous purple stars rising into the sky. Wu Taiji, on the other hand, could only passively endure. His screams were practically unheard. How is this possible? Wu Taiji is actually being beaten to the point where he can't even fight back. It wasn't just the human cultivators who were stunned. The alien army fell into a daze as well. The three ancestors of the Nine-Tailed Fox clan, the Moonwolf clan, and the Giant Turtle clan standing behind Bing Hui had their mouths wide open in shock. The Black King's body stiffened. He stared at the scene in the sky as if he had been petrified. Zhuowen fought his way up and sent Wu Taiji flying into the sky. Mount Sanqing turned into a black die. Zhuowen's eyes burned with killing intent as he punched out with his right fist, which landed between Wu Taiji's eyebrows. Zhuowen, a fifth blight expert, isn't that easy to kill. With Lord Binghui here, you're dead meat. Wu Taiji was both shocked and angry as he watched Zhuowen's approaching fist. However, he was very calm inside. Although he was shocked by Zhuowen's terrifying strength, he knew that Binghui was stronger. As long as Binghui attacked, this kid was dead meat. Chapter 36:15. Splat! Zhuowen's fist was as hot as the sun as it instantly pierced through Wu Taiji's head. Wu Taiji's head exploded. He didn't even have time to scream before he turned into a headless corpse that fell from the sky. Bang! Wu Taiji's corpse landed heavily on the square in front of Sanqing Palace. The powerful impact caused the square's ground to crack. An invisible ripple of energy rapidly spread out in all directions in a ring shape. The entire Sanqing Mountain shook violently once again. The ice crystals on the surface of the mountain that had been frozen by the ice radiance were shattered by the powerful impact, and many cracks appeared on the surface of the mountain. The entire Mount Sanqing fell into a long period of silence. Both the human race and the alien race were still in shock. None of the cultivators present were weak. Their consciousness wasn't weak either. Zhuowen and Wu Taiji's battle had reached the highest heavens. Their consciousness had seen everything clearly. In the end, Zhuowen shattered Wu Taiji's head with a punch. Then, Wu Taiji became a headless corpse that fell from the sky and smashed into the peak of the mountain. He never got up again. They couldn't even sense Wu Taiji's aura anymore. Everyone knew that Zhuowen's punch had directly killed Wu Taiji. However, what they didn't understand was that Wu Taiji was a late-stage fifth blight cultivator. He wasn't that easy to kill. For cultivators who had reached this level, even if their soul was heavily injured or their body collapsed, they could quickly recover as long as a trace of their soul still existed. Unless the divine soul was instantly destroyed. Everyone clearly saw Zhuowen's cultivation level. He was only at the peak of the third blight. His cultivation level couldn't compare to Wu Taiji's at all. Needless to say, his soul was stronger than Wu Taiji's. But even so, Wu Taiji was killed, and it was an instant kill. This Zhuowen is really not to be trifled with. The ancestors of the Nine-Tailed Fox clan, Moonwolf clan, and Giant Turtle clan secretly communicated with each other. Their eyes were filled with fear. At the same time, they rejoiced that they hadn't agreed when Wu Taiji asked them to send people to kill Zhuowen. They had remained neutral. So strong. This brat has hidden himself really well. The corner of the Black King's lips twitched. Remembering how he once played around with Ling Xian, he felt a little nervous. He also thought of the 3 pure ones who were injured, and a look of realization appeared in his eyes. He knew that the 3 pure ones' injuries had something to do with Zhuowen. Bing Hui's eyes narrowed. He lifted his head and looked at the figure floating in the sky with a smile on his face. Interesting, very interesting. I can't believe he has the power of a fragmented god. Bing Hui muttered to himself. His eyes were burning with passion. He could feel that Zhuowen was only at the peak of the third blight, but in the battle just now, he could feel the power of broken god force. He hadn't broken through the heavens, but he possessed the power of the shattering gods. What did this mean? In the 100 domains of the outer realms, even the top geniuses had never been able to obtain shattering divine power before breaking through to the heavens. However, this happened to Zhuowen. This kid must have a big secret on him. Zhuowen slowly descended from the sky and stood in the mountain gate. He didn't even look at Wu Taiji, who was lying in the middle of the square and had already died. The reason why he could get rid of Wu Taiji so easily was mainly because his original body had fused with his clone. His battle strength had reached the peak of the 5th blight. In the past 3 days, his original body had reached the edge of a breakthrough, and his clone had absorbed Dijiang and Niz's venomous insects, increasing his Panga sacred body to the great perfection realm. With such battle strength and the shattering divine power, he could easily get rid of Wu Taiji, who was at the late stage of the 5th blight. Bing Hui, you let such a piece of trash come to me to die, and you're hiding in the back. Are you afraid? Zhuowen looked down at Bing Hui, who was not far away. His voice was calm, but had a hint of provocation. You don't need to provoke me. I will definitely fight today. The reason why I let Wu Taiji fight is just to let you live a little longer. What I didn't expect was that you really do have some skills. Wu Taiji was actually not your match. Bing Hui walked forward step by step. With every step he took, the surrounding temperature continued to drop. The 3 ancestors behind Bing Hui suddenly felt a bone-chilling cold. They began to tremble and stopped, not daring to follow Bing Hui. The foreign race and human cultivators further away hurriedly retreated. Their cultivation was not high enough, so they could not withstand such a terrifying chill. Suddenly, snowflakes began to fall from the sky above Mount Sanshin. The snowflakes became thicker and thicker, and in the blink of an eye, the entire Mount Sanqing was covered in snowflakes. The feather snowflakes were quite weird. Some non-humankind and human cultivators who didn't manage to evacuate from Mount Sanqing were immediately corroded by the terrifying coldness and turned into ice statues soon after they touched the feather snowflakes. Run! The three ancestors of the nine-tailed fox clan, the moonwolf clan, and the giant turtle clan realized that something was wrong. They no longer cared about Bing Hui and rushed down the mountain. The snowflakes fell on them, forming terrifying ice crystals on their bodies. If it weren't for their high cultivation and the energy in their bodies, the three of them probably wouldn't have been able to escape the fate of being frozen like the other cultivators. When the three ancestors finally reached the foot of the mountain and left the range of the snowflakes, they immediately fell to the ground, gasping for breath. They didn't say anything. They immediately sat down cross-legged and began to circulate their heavenly Tao energy to drive away the terrifying chill that had already invaded their bodies. The Black King and some other human cultivators had reached Mount Sanqing in time, so they weren't too affected. However, when they saw the state of the nine-tailed fox clan, the moonwolf clan, and the giant turtle clan's ancestors, they all felt a chill in their hearts. So strong. The level of power that Bing Hui used is far beyond what we can compare to. Even if his cultivation is suppressed to the peak of the fifth blight, his strength is far beyond that. The Black King's gaze was grave. He felt the terror of the snowflakes and finally believed what the three purities had told him. Bing Hui was an existence they could not fight against. Zhuowen, can he really be Bing Hui's match? The Black King raised his head and looked at the young man standing in front of the mountain gate. His eyes were filled with worry. Although the Black King had played with Zhuowen before, he admired Zhuowen a lot. He didn't want Zhuowen to die like this. Thump, thump, thump. Bing Hui faced the snowflakes and arrived at the mountain gate, brushing past Zhuowen. He didn't stop. Instead, he came to the deep pit in the center of the square and slowly squatted down. You completely destroyed Wu Taiji's soul in one move. It seems your soul has surpassed the peak of the fifth blight. Bing Hui looked at the headless corpse in the pit and calmly analyzed. Zhuowen slowly turned around and silently looked at Bing Hui's back without saying a word. Chapter 36:16. Zhuowen's gaze was calm as he asked, "Are there people without Tao roots in the 100 Outer Realms?" Bing Hui was stunned. He didn't expect Zhuowen to ask him a question at a time like this. But he didn't care. Now, Zhuowen was already a dead man in his eyes. Ha! Of course there are. Although the 100 Outer Realms are controlled by clans, they aren't the only ones. Every realm has a large number of forces. There are also a large number of mortals. Of course, the mortals of the 100 Outer Realms are much nobler than the mortals of the lower realms. They all have cultivation, and some even reach the virtual sky realm. The reason we call them mortals is because they don't have Tao roots in their bodies. They can't attain Tao in their entire lives. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He didn't expect there to be people without Tao roots in the 100 Outer Realms. He thought that the 100 Outer Realms basically only had cultivators above the heaven-breaking realm. It seemed he was wrong. Could it be that no one with Tao roots succeeded in attaining Tao? Zhuowen asked with bright eyes. Bing Hui sneered. How could someone without Tao roots succeed in attaining Tao? This is simply defying the heavens. It's impossible. After saying this, Bing Hui suddenly stopped. He thought of something and carefully sized up Zhuowen. His gaze became more and more serious. Could it be that you have no Tao roots? Bing Hui asked seriously. Zhuowen laughed loudly and strode towards Bing Hui. His whole body erupted with a terrifying purple light that illuminated the sky. At this moment, Zhuowen made his move. The primordial technique circulated rapidly in his body. His black hair turned purple in the blink of an eye. Moreover, his purple hair grew crazily and hung down to his waist. Bing Hui's gaze was serious. He grabbed at the air with his right hand. Instantly, the ice and snow that swept over condensed into an ice spear. He faintly guessed that this Zhuowen might really be someone without Dao roots. Moreover, this was someone who succeeded in attaining Dao. This kid must have a great secret on him. He must be killed. It was definitely not luck that allowed someone without a Dao root to successfully corroborate their Dao. There must be some shocking secret that allowed them to succeed in the end. Bing Hui's killing intent soared. He took a step forward and instantly collided with Zhuowen. Bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, the two of them engaged in a fierce battle, and terrifying energy surged out. The two of them were on top of the mountain peak. Under the heavy snow, they turned into numerous afterimages, like two ghosts. Great formation, rise. When Zhuowen and Bing Hui clashed, Zhuowen knew that he was still slightly weaker than Bing Hui. Therefore, he immediately activated the trap and kill array that he had set up around him. This confinement killing array was a heaven-breaking stage 1 confinement killing array that Zhuowen had deduced on his own. A heaven-breaking level 1 confinement killing array. Bing Hui's face changed slightly. His movements slowed down as his power was greatly reduced by the trap and kill array. Bang! Zhuowen seized the opportunity and punched Bing Huidu in the chest. Bing Hui groaned and fell to the ground. Zhuowen frowned slightly. Blood appeared on his right fist. A heaven breaker armor. Huh? Zhuowen looked down at Bing Hui, who stood up again and was unharmed, and said calmly. Bing Hui looked up to the sky and laughed. Zhuowen, I underestimated you. You can actually set up a heaven-breaking, level 1 confinement killing array. You're definitely the first person in this universe since ancient times. However, no matter how strong your array skills are, you'll still die today. I have a heaven-breaking armor. Your attacks can't hurt me at all, but I can kill you alive. Boom. After Bing Hui finished speaking, he shot out like a cannonball and engaged in a fierce battle with Zhuowen again. The entire Mount Sanqing was shaking nonstop, and the heavy snowfall grew heavier and heavier, covering the entire Mount Sanqing. At the foot of the mountain, everyone was dumbfounded. Looking at the shocking battle on the mountain peak, everyone's hearts were filled with fear. Too strong. This kind of battle had long surpassed the scope of their universe. Zhuowen groaned. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He looked at Bing Hui, who was also pushed back a few steps. Bing Hui's strength was indeed terrifying. If it wasn't for the confinement killing array restraining this guy, Zhuowen might have been defeated. Zhuowen, you should be proud to be able to fight me to this extent. I won't play with you anymore. This move will kill you. Bing Hui laughed wildly. He formed a seal with both hands. Waves of cold air condensed on his hands, finally forming a crystal-clear ice blade. This ice blade only had a blade, and no hilt. A sharp and terrifying saber chi swept out violently. Even the surrounding trap and kill array was affected by this ice saber. Blade condenses the world. Bing Hui raised his hands. The ice blade flew into the air. Then he stepped on the back of the blade. Clang! The ice blade suddenly swept out. Its speed was as fast as lightning. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Strangely, as the ice blade flew through the air, it changed its position dozens of times in the blink of an eye. It was as if it had teleported. Zhuowen couldn't determine which direction the ice blade came from. What a strange ice blade! Zhuowen's eyes were solemn. He took a deep breath, and a blazing golden light surged between his eyebrows. Sword, come! Zhuowen roared. His right hand touched between his eyebrows. The golden light left his body and shot out instantly. A golden divine sword soared into the sky and soared in the air. The moment the first golden divine sword flew out, the golden light between his eyebrows didn't dim. Instead, it shot out golden light again and again. In an instant, 9 rays of golden light shot out and condensed into 9 divine swords. Including the first one, there were a total of 10 divine swords. Sword guard. Zhuan's mind moved. 10 godly soul sword essences formed a circle around him to protect him. His face was extremely pale. Releasing 10 godly soul sword essences at once consumed a lot of his energy. However, he had to do it because the ice blade was too fast and its tracks were too strange. Bang, bang, bang. In an instant, the ice blade landed behind him and was blocked by one of the godly soul sword essences. Clang, clang, clang. The moment the ice blade collided with the first godly soul sword essence, its angle changed dozens of times. Each time, it slashed toward Zhuan, creating sparks with the godly soul sword essences. Although the ice blade was fast, there were too many godly soul sword essences. Moreover, they surrounded Zhuan and blocked the ice blade's attacks. Zhuan's eyes lit up. A terrifying energy began to surge in his body. This energy was simply too terrifying, and it had been suppressed by Zhuan all along. It's coming. Zhuan muttered to himself. He stomped his right foot and charged toward Bing Hui with 10 godly soul sword essences to block the ice blade's surprise attack. Bing Hui's face was gloomy. He did not expect Zhuan to block his ice blade. This made him angry. Now that he saw Zhuan taking the initiative to come to him, killing intent boiled in his heart. He charged forward without thinking. However, Bing Hui soon realized that something was wrong. He realized that a terrifying blight tribulation aura was surging out of Zhuan's body. This aura exploded and shot into the sky. Then, a huge black hole appeared in the sky. This black hole was like a single eye staring at Zhuan and Bing Hui below. Blight tribulation? I didn't expect you to break through at this time. You want to drag me through the blight tribulation? Bing Hui immediately knew Zhuan's intention. He laughed mockingly. It's just the 4th blight tribulation. You think it's useful to me? It's just scratching an itch. Then why don't you try and see if it's just scratching an itch? Zhuan sneered and completely released the blight tribulation aura.